thing.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hopkinton School Board meeting for November the 5th. We have a full board with us here this evening. Norm Gupel, Rob Nato, Seth Aframe, Andrea Folson, myself, Jim O'Brien, and then we have our student reps, Mia Richter and Juliet Shahade. And then we're joined by our leadership team, Chris Kelly, Michelle Clark, Matt Stone, Mandy Hibbard, Bill Carroza, Rebecca Gagnon, and Amy Doyle. Thank you all for joining us here this evening. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
So, and I thought I'd do something differently. This is a surprise, Norm. I think what I'll do is every 2 weeks, take a picture of the Harold Martin flag in front of the construction. And then we can get an update. So that's what you're going to see.
I like that.
Can you see it?
We can.
You can see it okay? All right.
Do you want to lead us?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll get a 2-week update or weekly update or quicker, whatever we do, but we'll try to give updates between Bill and I of construction of the flag.
That's great. That's a great idea. Thanks, Steve. I like that. And it's good to see some steel going up.
Yeah.
All right. So we are here today for a school board meeting again in a complete virtual environment. So we're able to conduct our business completely virtually because the governor has extended an emergency declaration and emergency orders that allows for public bodies like the Hopkinton School Board to conduct its business and business meetings without a physical location. So we are 100% virtual, and we are broadcasting, or I guess we're broadcasting our meeting using Zoom. And so anybody has access to be able to listen into our meeting either over the Zoom platform as well as calling in. If they don't want to use their computer, they can call in so they can listen to the proceedings. And then we also have 2 options during our meeting, one coming up soon and one towards the end of the meeting for public comment, where anybody who wishes to provide comments to the board will be able to do so by raising their hand. All the other provisions of RSA 91A, which is the open meeting guidelines of the state, are being followed. So we will have minutes of this meeting, and those will be posted in accordance with RSA 91A. The only change that, well, there's probably several changes you'll see from our normal mode of doing business, but the one that you'll probably notice right off is when we do voting, all votes are roll call votes. And so I'll call on board members and then they'll record their vote accordingly. And then this meeting is also being recorded so that it will be on our website, so you can watch it anytime you'd like, actually, after we post it. So with that, Steve, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening?
Yeah, the agenda is fine as it stands.
And the only thing I would note as we go through the agenda, we have a couple topics this evening that I think there's a lot of interest in and may take a while for the board to work through. And so if it's okay with the board, my suggestion is that we will do the administrator reports. I will then, if it's okay with folks, table the student safety presentation. And then if we have time at the meeting to come back to that. If not, Steve said that he's comfortable doing that at a later meeting if folks are okay with that. That way it gives us enough room and time to sort of get into the topics at hand. I don't see anybody looking like they're going to object to that. So perfect. So Steve, any correspondence this evening?
There were a large number of correspondence placed in the folder for the meetings. Hopefully everybody got a chance. I tried to keep up with them this week.
Great. So our next item is approval of the Mitt. So I'd ask if there is a motion for the Hopkinton School Board to approve the minutes of the regular school board meeting held on October 29th, 2020.
So moved. Second.
Are there any edits, changes people like to offer? Hearing none. Norm?
Norm Gupel is a yes.
Rob?
Rob Nato is a yes.
Seth?
As a frame, yes.
Andrea?
Andrea Folsom, yes.
And Jim O'Brien is a yes, and so those minutes are approved. So this brings us to our first public comment for this evening. And so if you're an attendee on the Zoom, you can move your cursor or your mouse down towards the bottom of your screen, and there should be a raise hand button. And if you click that button, that will let us know that you have a comment that you'd like to present to the school board. So I'm not seeing any hands raised. And as I mentioned, there will be another opportunity for public comment towards the end of the meeting. So I'll close public comment, not seeing any hands raised, and move on to comments from the Hopkinton School Board. Norm.
I was waiting for Andrea first. Okay, I'll go first. No, I just want to say thank you to everyone in the community, the teachers and students I spoke to over the last week. There was a lot of correspondence that I've been discussing with, and I just really want to send out a huge thank you. You know, hearing for your thoughts, your feedback, your suggestions, your recommendations. It was great to hear. It was great to go to parent-teacher conference this week and to meet some of these teachers I've never met before. It was really great to hear and have some of their feedback and thoughts regarding my children. It was great to see them, even though it was my first time ever through Zoom. And lastly, you know, congratulations to the boys. You know, they had a rough last game yesterday, but congratulations on a great season. And the girls are off to the championship game today with a 4-0 win. So good luck in the finals.
Thanks, Norm.
I echo what Norm was going to say, or what Norm just did say. I really appreciated all of the emails and input that we've had. I tried my best to respond to most of them, but they were a little faster than I could respond. So, but I just wanted to really thank folks. I think that hearing about different family experiences is really helpful and helps me to, I think, be a better board member, to balance a variety of perspectives while making, you know, a decision that I feel is, you know, threads the needle through all of those. So thank you.
Robert, Seth.
I'll be real quick. So echo Andrea and Norm, and particularly want to thank all the faculty who sent some very detailed explanations and rationales as to why the proposed schedule will be beneficial to students. And I also want to put a little plug in for the Interact Club. I got flocked this week. It brought a big smile to my face to see all those flamingos out on the lawn. So if you've never been flocked, get in touch with Pam Moskal, or if you want to flock somebody, it's a great thing to do. You pay a ransom, they take them away. It's a good time. I'm done.
Seth.
We had the honor of being the first family flocked for this season. It was very exciting. So yes, it's an excellent fundraiser. I just want to say I was impressed with the parent conferences. I think most things on Zoom are worse, but I actually thought parent-teacher conferences somehow were better. Timely, and the teachers were sort of right on it, and it was actually helpful for me in this time as we're talking about schedules to have a moment to ask some, you know, questions of the faculty that would have been harder for me to do otherwise. So I want to thank everyone for all of their openness and candidness and thoughts, and it has been helpful from all the parents and all the teachers. So thank you everyone for taking it seriously and helping us make the right decision.
So I'll be brief too. I first just want to acknowledge that this has been a very long week because of the elections, but I want to thank everybody who's tuning in for voting. We had a record turnout here in Hopkinton. It's great to see, and I know the use of the schools is a great community asset. So just want to acknowledge and thank everybody for that. And then I just want to give a special thank you to Chris and Rebecca, who I spent more time on Zoom last night with got a request from some parents to answer some questions, and I just think it's great that Kristen and Rebecca would go into a Zoom, you know, after hours in the evening to answer those questions. So thank you very much, Chris and Rebecca, for doing that. I think it's a huge service to the community for you guys, your willingness to engage in that way. So kudos and thank you. All right, so our next up on the agenda are presentations and staff reports. And so we have administrator reports today. And so Steve, I don't know if you want to set these up or anything to say before we hop into them.
Sure. Just the first of the month is report time for administrators. We alternate between building administrators and central office. So this month is November. So we've submitted written reports, which are in the support materials. If you want to see the entire report, they're on the district website. But the administrators will just a brief overview and answer questions. But thank you. I enjoy reading and actually enjoy the reflection of writing the reports. But thank you to the central office folks for doing the reports. And we'll let Matt lead it off.
Sure. I tried to give an update. Obviously, I know the device situation is an important one as we look at options going ahead. Unfortunately, still not a lot to report there. We, like most schools in the country, are still waiting for most of the devices that we ordered over the summer. So we're waiting. I wish I could say with patience, but certainly with determination that hopefully the one-to-one program that we have planned will at some point go into operation. Other than that, I'm happy to take questions. Just tried to highlight a few things going on.
Any questions for Matt?
Do we have an emergency set of something aside if like there's an absolute student who needs a Chromebook, Matt, like that,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there definitely are situations, and typically we look to the building administrators and other staff who are involved with children. But yeah, if there is an absolute need that they are not making progress or are falling behind, we do have a very small number of devices, but there's not a lot. As I sort of said, there are absolutely enough to be remote because the town has been very good about providing devices for students, so we have enough to cover the gap, and then or to be in school session, just not the both for the most part.
Thank you.
Matt, it's probably unfair, but I'll ask you anyway. So if you had a crystal ball on the devices, like what do you, you're probably not hearing much, but I'm just sort of curious, like what are the expectations perhaps?
When I asked that in the summer, they said late October. So that wasn't, great news when we hit November without seeing any significant number of them. So I really don't know. They are doing partial shipments. They're trying to sort of spread them around. Definitely heard that from a lot of other districts that, they may have gotten, 5% or 10% or 30%. Really just depends. A few districts that ordered even earlier in March have not received full orders yet, whereas some who ordered in July have. So it's
good to keep in perspective. So thank you. Yeah.
You saved me from asking that today, Jim, so thank you.
Figured it was going to come up at some point. All right, any other questions from Matt?
Last question. Do you know what age group you see more of a lack of devices at home? How do you guys like kind of taking a tally of what age groups are, is it high school, middle school, that you see a lack of laptops that people have at home or Chromebooks?
It's definitely more the early elementary. There's sort of a steady increase for the most part as students get older that they have their own, which kind of makes sense as quite a few parents, sort of say, okay, you need this to do homework or whatever. So we see some level at all grade levels. We handed out devices to seniors in the spring who didn't have something available. But definitely we saw the most, when Harold Martin was forced to go remote for 2 weeks, that was as many devices as we handed out for the middle high school for half the population. So.
Great. Thank you, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
I had another question, Matt. If we were to look at doing purchasing for other supportive technology like cameras or screens, that sort of stuff, do you think that we would be facing the same sort of lag time, or would that stuff come a little faster than 3 months?
It varies. We're definitely seeing uneven. So like document cameras, for instance, are still running about 2 months back ordered, has been our experience. Monitors, sort of the basic equipment is pretty available. We've seen, if we needed 5,000 of them, that might be a bit of an issue, but fortunately we're not that district. So buying 50 isn't a real problem. And there's been a slow recovery, I would say, of the supply chain. In March and April, there was a lot of disruption, and even the basics were often out of stock. But it does, I needed to buy some battery chargers, and they're back ordered by 2 weeks. So, who knows?
Thanks.
All right, Matt, thanks for all that you do to keep us plugged in and moving. We really do appreciate it. And I know the ordering is frustrating, so thanks for staying on top of it too.
Not my favorite, but.
All right, so next is Mandy.
Hi. So I'll try to make this as quick as possible, but since it's my first, I guess, real report, I did want to take a minute to kind of talk about really how thankful I am that if you're going to move to a new area of the state and move districts, I'm really glad that Hopkinton chose me. The care that is the mission that kind of drew me to Hopkinton in the first place has really benefited me over the last few months. People have taken care, given me care and taken care of me, and as I navigated the start of all of this. So I think there's lots to celebrate in all this stuff that seems pretty overwhelming. One of the things that we were tasked with from the start was making sure that we got in all of our meetings for the governor's executive order. We got those in. I'm gathering all the data right now to submit what I need to the Department of Ed, so we can look at costs and all of those things. So when those are ready, I'll make sure to share those as well. And just really celebrating the flexibility and the patience and everything it takes to be able to do education right now. It's been amazing to watch. And to learn and grow through, for sure. For me, moving forward, my biggest thing is just learning, continuing to learn the resources we have available, continuing to learn the ins and outs and all of those things that just take time. But I'm really looking forward to continuing that growth, because I'm excited about the things that I've learned already. So it's a great district, and I'm thankful that everybody welcomed me in.
Nice, thank you. Any questions for Mandy?
Yes, I had a question. I saw in your report that you've been able to sit in on a lot of meetings, which I think is fantastic. And I didn't know if any of the feedback that you've received or anything that you've seen would indicate that we have an increased need due to switching so quickly, well, due to the pandemic, basically, and having to go remote last spring, and then having, a challenging or not our typical school year this year.
Right. I mean, I can't say that we've had, an increase in referrals or anything like that, simply because I think there's so many layers in place to go through first. And we've done those and we've put those in place. I think the team's working really hard. I mean, we're working right now to develop protocols that if we shift to remote, on a dime, hopefully we have a couple more weeks before we have to worry about that, so we can get it all in place. But we have plans for every student, all those students that we know that need a little bit extra or need to come in or just need services in a different way, that we have that plan in place and ready to go. So we're working through all those. And we started the school year with the staff really talking about comp ed. Yes or no, we had to answer that question, but also sitting and saying, okay, what did we learn during the spring that we know we need to do now to help mitigate some of that, continued loss, if you even want to call it that. I would say there was less, not to say there wasn't any regression, but there was probably less regression than people thought when you compare them to everybody else, right? Every kid was impacted by remote learning in the spring. So I wouldn't say there was a significant increase in what their needs were, but the needs did shift because our model shifted. So.
Great, that's helpful, thank you.
Mandy, I just want to say I thank you for your report, and I really enjoyed how you are trying to build these relationships with our community. And it is really hard, during a global public crisis like this, and to be able to do that, I just want to say it's great to hear. Having someone come in here and being able to establish that relationship with our community, I just want to say it was great to see. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks.
Other questions for Mandy? I just want to echo Norm's thought that I can only imagine how challenging it is to sort of switch jobs in the middle of a pandemic and having to, conduct most of your relationship building over Zoom. So I'm glad to hear that, the community is helping you along, and so welcome. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Thank you.
Michelle, business office.
Hi. So lots of different things going on. Everybody knows this time of year is obviously a lot of my work is related to budget, but also because of funds that have been allocated by the state that came through, obviously the federal government, are a lot of work as well with the building project and trying to keep on the CIP. So it just seems like there's something that always has to get put aside until I have, more time, because the main priority right now is trying to get to a place that you guys can have the budget when you need to, in the way that you would like. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but.
I'm just going to praise you also. I thank you for all the work you're helping Rob and I in this budget process, and Steve. The meetings we've had almost back-to-back weeks, working on this. And I just want to say thank you for the additional support. Kids drive me nuts. Thank you for your help. I appreciate it.
Any questions for Michelle? All right, thank you, Michelle. Norm sort of said it, but we know how much your hands are full. So thank you for all the support you provide. Mr. Chamberlain.
Sure, and certainly answer any questions regarding the report submitted. Just a couple of things since then. We're working hard on the plan associated with the non-discrimination policy. We had a really wonderful hour discussion with the Curriculum Council about how to approach this curricular-wise and the social justice work. And today we went through the plan and assigned different components of the plan as a leadership team with some benchmarks. So I really feel good about the progress we're going to make in that important area. Secondly, and Bill's had this experience, it's really surreal when you hire someone you had as one of your students, and to see them work in the buildings, and just to come to work so excited to be in Hopkinton from a student. And sometimes the students were a little bit of work when I was a principal, and now you see them coming to work. It's just a lot of fun. And just a real appreciation to all the community members that have reached out, and just to show some appreciation, some grace just about my 22 years. I had a phone call this afternoon from a community member who just was so gracious. And so I just really appreciate all the real care that this community has shown for me in the last while since this transition. But just really appreciate the care of the leadership team in this community for me as well.
Any questions for Steve? Hearing none or seeing none. Steve, thanks. Oh, Andrea.
I was going to say, I don't have a question, but I do want to echo, I know we do these long school board meetings, and then Steve is up bright and early Friday morning, meeting with us yet again, with Jim and I, and I appreciate your willingness to meet with us at the drop of a hat and early in the morning. It doesn't end when we flip off our cameras at 10 p.m. on a Thursday night. So I appreciate that.
Very welcome. I appreciate your service, everybody's service. We talked about it today as a leadership. It's a difficult time in school leadership. It's a difficult time in school board leadership as well.
Andrew, I don't remember having any long school board meetings. I don't know what you're talking about, but I appreciate that. All right, so as we said at the top, we're going to table the student safety presentation for now. See how the meeting goes, and definitely have it, if we don't get to it tonight, definitely have it on tap for our next meeting. So that brings us to items for board discussion. I still crack up learning in a global pandemic. It's such a nice title for something that's so hard and complicated and complex to put it into such a few words. But so we're going to talk about the change of, or the proposed change of schedules. And so just to recap, I think I'm sure everybody who's listening tonight may already be aware, but just want to sort of set up where we are in the conversation, so we're all starting on the same foot. The board way back in August, made a motion and voted to go to a hybrid model. And so our administration, our staff, our support staff, did an amazing amount of work to get us, get the district prepared, get our students prepared, get our faculty prepared to enter into that hybrid model. And I think one of the organizing principles, if we wanted to call it that, was around this idea of adaptive management, knowing that what we put in place back in August, we're going to learn from, and we're going to be making adjustments as we go. And then over the course of the last couple of months, the board had been having discussions with our two associations around how do we safely operate in a pandemic. And so we have a couple of MOAs, memorandums of understanding, that came out of those discussions, one around health and safety, and the other one around working conditions. Part of the working conditions agreement was a reflection and a look back at the schedule, and a collaborative approach to looking at the schedule and how to do that adaptive management. What are the things that we ought to be thinking about changing as we move through the course of the school year. So at our last meeting, which was just last Thursday, we heard from Harold Martin School, Mr. Carroza, and then from the middle high school around some suggested schedule changes for different reasons, but definitely ideas around schedule changes. The board asked to move, not make a decision that night, that we would come back tonight to have a discussion after hearing from some public input. And then, as I mentioned, Chris and Rebecca had a question and answer session last night. So that's where we are at in terms of our process to date. So tonight, my hope and expectation is that that the board will make a decision for what kind of schedule changes that we want to make moving forward, knowing that I think the principle of adaptive management is probably going to remain a strong one as we move through the next few months in our school year, for how we want to keep adjusting to what I think we're learning in our operations, and then what the pandemic brings to us. So that's where we're at. I'm just trying to think of how to start the conversation, or I'm not, what I think the first item is under the middle high school. So maybe we can start there and have a discussion around the proposal, which was, I'm gonna maybe not do it full justice, but I'm gonna try, that we do a Skinny Monday, virtual or online. And then we would have 1 week where students would be in school on assigned days, so like an A/B schedule, like our other schools are. And then we would switch to 2 weeks remote, full remote. So again, carrying over that Skinny Monday, but staying on the same schedule remote for 2 weeks, and then coming back in the next week in person. So it'd be 1 week on, 2 weeks off is the proposal that was presented to us last week. I think I got that right. And so I don't know, I guess I just want to leave it open and to see where board members are. We sort of ended last week's meeting, we went around and sort of shared where our heads were and what we're feeling about that. And I know we've had time over the last week to get a lot of input into probably reflect and have a lot of conversation. So just sort of see where people are at currently. Anybody want to kick it off?
Gotta unmute
Do I
yourself.
always have to break? Do I always have to break that? You want to go first, Rob? This time, go first, Rob.
Sure, I'll go first, Norm. Why not? After reading lots of correspondence and, as I said in the open, particularly going and listening to how staff were articulating what they're going through right now and how this change will improve the way they deliver education, and coming to the realization that, this is not the best fit for everybody, but for most, this seems like it's going to do a much better job given our circumstances. And I was thinking a lot about the early days on the board when they told us what our role is around, the superintendent runs the school and that we should trust the people that are the professionals. And they've been hard at work for 8 weeks and they have a really good grasp as to what is working and what is not and how to improve upon that. So, building on that principle of management that changes, I think that this is a proposal we should move forward. And I also think on the table, Jim, was that, this would be through midterms and then maybe consider going to the one-to-one. I think that was part of the proposal. So it all makes perfect sense to me in so many ways. And, the structure piece just keeps coming through, that kids need structure and predictability to be successful day in and day out, have a place to be, know what's going to happen, and who's going to be there. And this is going to provide a lot more of that structure. So yeah, there are downsides, but I think the upsides outweigh them. And I really hope that the whole board can get behind this.
Thanks, Rob.
I'll gladly go, and I'll do the best to share what I have to say. And Seth, I'll do it before 8. If you know me as a board member, one of the things that I try to do is I try to put myself out there and try and get as much opinion, feedback from this community, from our teachers, or from our students before I weigh a decision. I've never weighed a decision on this board based on my own child, because I always felt that I'm elected here to listen to this community, listen to our, to you guys, to the board, to the teachers, and the taxpayer, and put forward, what's in my heart and what I feel is best for this community, best for our kids, and really put forward that decision, because I believe it's important that I go in this completely open-minded. And I did that this week. I left last week's meeting really losing sleep because I didn't know which way to look at. And I was back and forth continuously the whole time. And I went through every email from every parent, replied back to them, contacted them, called them, and I got feedback from them regarding how they felt about the schedule. A lot of parents, had said that they were concerned that their child was playing Fortnite at 11 o'clock in the morning and were not and had nothing to do. I had some parents say that they wish that their child, had more instruction or more work in order to get through their classes. And I had some parents tell me that kids can't stand behind a computer and learn, that they struggle. They can't do it, and they have a learning disability, and there's just no right solution to this. And our teachers provide some great emails, and I really do appreciate it. I think it was great to hear their perspective, because you know what, they're the one that teaching during a global pandemic that, quite frankly, you're not going to find in school for them. They didn't have a college class somewhere, so this is all new to them, which I honestly respect. And I re-enrolled in 8th grade Spanish the other day, and I want to say thanks to Steve for attending it with me. And as I said in the beginning, I go into everything trying my hardest to understand the perspective of the teachers. I go in, I try to understand the perspective of the student, and to make a really good decision. So in my class, I sat there as a student and listened in Spanish. I took French, people, so bear with me. And I was able to understand the instructor. I was able to see how the teacher had lots of energy teaching these students, but there was hiccups. I mean, the technology was choppy. We had music that kind of played back and forth, and the teacher was managing, you know, the students at home and the students in class, and it was hard, you know, and I felt that, but I also see the effort and the dedication from the teacher was remarkable, and it was great to see, because we sometimes feel that when we're put in a different situation, we sometimes don't appreciate what we're getting until we actually see it. And it really spoke a lot to me, seeing that, you know, no matter what situation we're in, you know, we may have a change of opinion on things. And for me, you know, I attended classes at the high school, you know, two of them with Steve, and I got a feeling of what is the best way that our kids can learn. You know, is it in person? Is it home? What is the path? And there is not going to be an answer that's going to be happy to all parents. Each parent's going to have an opinion what they feel is best for kids, and I understand that. So when I went through this exercise with going to class, pretending to understand the struggle that parents have mentioned, understanding that maybe their kids want more work, I was still torn. It wasn't until you know, I finally sat down, I started having parent-teacher conferences, and it was a different feel than what it was. You know, the feel I got is that, you know, when Owen was growing up, you know, a lot of teachers would say he's a funny kid, he, you know, goofs off a little bit, but he's doing well in the class. And I said, well, that's just like his father. And we continued on, you know, in the years with the same behavior. But this year I got this feeling like Owen's a good kid, but we don't know him. And it's not a bad thing. It's not their fault. We're in a global pandemic, and it's nothing with the teachers, because I have all the respect for what they're doing. But I felt that as a father for the first time, I'm like, I think it's going to be better for my son to have a little more instructional. And I felt that, you know, I feel like the relationship between the student and the teacher is so important. And if we're able to give them that opportunity now, you know, from this time through Christmas, through the new year, I don't support, and I think Chris can speak to that. This plan is not to go to June of next year. It's really to go, I think, to the middle of January. It alleviates a little bit of an issue with, you know, 14-week quarantine when it comes to Thanksgiving and to Christmas. I firmly believe it's important that our kids get a little more instructional. You know, I really felt that they need to have a daily check-in. They need to be able to be spoken to, you know, have a constant communication with the teacher. And that was the general consensus from this community, that they're looking to compromise, you know, with this school district, that they want to have this more structure, more curriculum for their students. And then we reevaluate it in January. So I'm sorry for the long way answer. I mean, that's just kind of where it was, you know, through the last week. And I really gave it my all in trying to understand this community. And I put myself out there. And it was really a magical experience, really seeing how our teachers work. It really was. The energy, the excitement they had to make a virtual lesson and to put themselves, you know, in an environment where, you know, you don't learn that. Yeah, I really appreciated the opportunity to see it. So that's the experience I got. You know, I had issues with the cameras freezing, Jim. You know, there was a lot of technology issues that I had, that I would interrupt the teachers teaching to say, hey, I can't see you. I can't see Jim's math board where he was writing things. But hopefully down the road, we fix the technology, and that, you know, other students don't experience what I had. I think anything can be redefined in order to help. So just wanted to give a little bit of a feedback on that.
Thanks, Norm. You don't want to see Jim's math board. It would have all the wrong answers on it. Andrea or Seth?
I'll go ahead. So I am supportive of going to the schedule as proposed. I wouldn't call them concerns. I have a couple hopes, I guess. I hope that, number one, with our buildings empty on the weeks that we're not in school, I hope that we can use that space and whatever staff we have available to help those kids that we do hear from who find the home environment to be not conducive to learning. That is a concern that I have about this because I do feel like the commentary that we get is weighted to parents who know this will work. I feel like we get less probably commentary from the parents who may be in situations where sitting down to write me a long email about why this is such a wonderful plan is not easy, given probably other pressures in their lives. So I hope and I expect that we'll be aware of that and try to find ways to accommodate those students using the building and using our staff to provide environments and spaces that are good for learning for everybody. That's one. Two, I'm hopeful that for the remote, and I sort of tested this with some of the teachers I talked to during the conferences, that we use the platforms, as Rebecca was talking about, to be as engaging and interactive as we can with the remote learning. Because what we're going to miss is, we talk about social emotional, but what we're really missing is, in a classroom, you can do different kinds of things. And I think you can, and I think we've gotten a lot better since the spring with using Zoom than we were then. But what I hope I don't hear or see in the room is either 5 minutes and then go do this, or here's a pre-done video. I think that it can be more engaging. I know at least all the teachers I talk to seem to want to do that. So I hope we move in that direction with the remote. I think, we can be a lot better, and I think we will be a lot better than we were in the spring. And finally, I hope we use the in-time period. I know that assessment is one thing, but the idea of sending these kids into school and say, all right, now here are all the tests you're going to take. Not only is that stressful, but I think it's counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve during that week, which this is their human experience now. The rest of their existence will be Zoom based, and to, go in and have an isolated experience of taking a test or some other sort of, assessed kind of thing. Obviously that will have to happen sometime, but I do worry that we're just going to use that, and then their whole life is now sort of either computer or isolated. So those are my three concerns, but I am supportive of the plan.
Thanks, Seth. There we go, Andrea.
Down to us. So I have agonized over this, I would say, for the past week. I don't love it. And the reason why is because and just because I don't love it doesn't mean I'm not going to support it. But the reason why I don't love it is because when I read emails or I hear from students who the remote days work for them, or the hybrid days aren't working for them as well. I hear I'm bored, or my child is bored, they don't have enough work, and so they're done with school early in the day. When I hear from parents or kids who remote isn't working for them, I hear my child is depressed, my child is disengaged, my child is despondent, and remote really has an emotional impact on me. And that weighs on me. I think that is a big deal. I think if this were to go through January, or not through January to MLK Day for 6 weeks, I would support it at this point for a short period. However, I would like to see some real changes. I would like us to be able to use that time to come up with an even better plan. And I do think that can happen. I think already we have seen many of our teachers have interesting and different things that they would be willing to try or would like to try. And I would like to give them that opportunity. I would just like us to use this time, these 6 weeks, to the best of our ability. I understand the need for kids to catch up with curriculum, and I understand how wonderful it is to be able to see folks face to face like we are now, even though we're on a screen. I very much like and support what Seth was saying about making sure that the technology is engaging. So you're not just sitting here watching folks chattering away for 3 hours, because that's super boring. But that you're having to engage and you're having to interact. And we also know how to do assessments in a remote environment. So we don't have to make those in-person days all assessment days. I would also like us to look at when we are having kids coming in who are doing, who are doing the remote from school. We have such creative teachers and creative administrators. I know Rebecca even last time talked about, different clubs and that kind of thing. And it speaks to the creativity. And so if we have kids in school, because they need additional support or to see people in those days, I would like for us to also work with, okay, you're between classes. This is a 10-minute stand up and do an activity with another person, because you do have the ability to be face to face. I will support this, but I just want us to be as thoughtful and caring and use all of this time so well through the holiday season. And I know that that's what our teachers and our administrators want. And that's the reason I'm supporting it, but I'm doing it a little bit with a heavy heart and knowing that this is going to be a real struggle for some families and for some kids. And I know we'll get that curriculum, but this is going to be really hard. And I don't want to lose that. And there are going to be kids and families that aren't going to speak up and aren't going to say that. And we just have to be there to spot them when they're falling through the cracks. And I know that we can do that. So that's my passionate, apparently, take on the situation. I think this probably is one of the hardest decisions I feel that I've had to make on the board, which is saying something because we've had to make a lot of decisions.
Thanks, Andrea. So I think I'm going to echo a little bit of what Andrea said, although probably not as passionately. That was good. I guess in the words I'm going to use are probably not going to be perfect, and I just want to start out by saying that. But I guess there's just a few things. When I read some of the comments specifically from teachers, like my heart breaks. I completely understand, although I don't understand it as well as our teachers do. But I understand how challenging this is. How much this is different from a normal work environment that they're used to, how emotionally draining I'm sure this is. And then, I one email standing out where one of the teachers was saying that, she's so frustrated and hard that, she cries at the end of the day. And that's hard to read. That's the reality our teachers are facing. And in some ways, a lot of the comments that I read from teachers is saying that we don't have the technology in order to accomplish this. That to me feels like it's a failing on me as a board member, because our teachers should have the tools they need in order to accomplish the job that we have. And if our teachers are frustrated because they don't have the technology tools, then it's not that we can't order them and maybe it won't come in, but I think the system that we put in place, if we're not giving the teachers the tools they need to accomplish their tasks, then the model isn't right, and we failed there. So I like Andrea, I struggle because I had hope, and I still hope that we can have more in-person class. When I read even the comments from parents who are supportive, most of them, if not all of them, say that, we want our kids in school. We want more of the in-person education. We understand that that's a challenge. We understand there's limitations, and we understand that there's issues around technology and staffing. Like all those things are real. But in my view, we have to figure out how we get beyond that. because, you know, 100% remote instruction, I don't feel, just me as one person, one board member, is not the solution to our challenge. It's something that we probably need to do for a shorter term. But I think Andrea spoke to it well. You know, there is going to be large large negativity to this model. It's not a perfect model. We're going to have kids who probably aren't going to thrive here. So this isn't, to me, this isn't a long-term situation, a long-term solution. This is probably a short-term solution to get to something different. And so I can go along, but I have, rather than saying I hope certain things happen, I think as a board we should ask our administration and our leadership to make certain things happen. And I'll just suggest a few that I would like to see happen. The first one is I would like to see it spelled out clearly, how clearly to our parents, to how what are those decisions that we're going to make to which students and can come into school on more than just those 2 days over 3 weeks. Like, what are those decisions? How are we going to make them? Which students are eligible to come in? Because we do know that this isn't going to work for everybody. And so I think parents need clarity to understand how their students can get the services they need, how the students can engage in going to school, if that's what's going to be best for them. And so I just think it's okay for us to say, like, there is going to be a way, but I think that needs to be spelled out and needs to be clear. Parents and students both need to know how they get access to that. And what happens if the answer is no and they still feel the answer is yes? What is their, who do they ask? How do they get an appeal? That's the wrong term, but you know what I mean. I said I wasn't going to use all the right words, so that's a wrong one, but I think you understand what I mean. The next one is I just think we have to purchase technology. I mean, we started the hybrid model way back in September. There hasn't been a proposal that came to this board for specific technology purchases for how to make our teachers teach better. If they need cameras, I want to get them the cameras they need. If they have microphone needs, I want them to have the microphone needs. And so I don't, you know, we have to make that happen for our teachers and for our staff. I think just saying that we have technology needs and saying that it's expensive isn't enough. We need, as a board, we need a budget, and we need to make decisions for what technology we can afford and purchase, because the longer we wait, we just heard earlier from Matt that our Chromebooks we ordered months ago and we still don't know where they're going to come. And so if we want this technology in the classroom, if we want our teachers to have the tools that they need, then we have to order it. And we got to get on that, because the longer we wait, the longer the delay is going to be. And then I think that, you know, if this is a model that we're going to approve to move forward with through you know, mid-January, MLK Day, then we have to have a plan that what comes after it, and we can't wait for that plan until January to figure out what it's going to be. And so I want to charge our administration tonight, or when we approve this plan, that we need to get cracking on what that next model is, and make sure that we have the tools in place in order for our teachers to be successful and our students to be successful. To me, I think that model is going back to more in school if we can, if health and safety allows for us to be going back to the 50% model. I think we should strive for that. And I think in order to accomplish that, we're going to have to know how we're going to have curriculum delivered to our students. So we're not only having half curriculum delivered, we need to be able to do it. Other districts in the state have hybrid models in which they're delivering curriculum to their students. And so I don't think it's an impossible task. It's a task that we have to think through, we have to work through, we have to collaborate with teachers to figure out how we make it happen. But it is happening elsewhere. It's happening across the country, and I think Hopkinton can do it. And I think we can use this time in order to put the pieces together in order to successfully have a middle high school that has students going to class, as well as being educated when they're at home, with clear expectations, clear guidelines for how they get the work done. And it goes with technology, but I just think as a board member, I will vote for this as long as there's a clear expectation that at each of our board meetings, there's an update on how that planning is going, how the administration's working on it, resources that they need from the board, because again, we can't vote to send resources if it's not being brought to us to what those resource needs are. It's not really up to the, you know, our building administration, you know, they have budgets but it has to come up, I think, to the board, especially if there's resource needs that is going to make or break how we're trying to educate our children. So that's what I would ask. And then, so anyway, so I can go along. I would rather see it more in person. I'd rather see it like a 1 on, 1 off, rather than 2 weeks off, 1 week on. I understand under the 2 weeks off, 1 week on model that we can, I think Steve this morning when we talked about this, you know, he said that gives us more opportunity to catch up, for lack of a better term, if we do the 2 weeks off, 1 week on. I appreciate that. I can live with it. I would rather see more in person as when we can. Again, we're not going to this model because of health and safety concerns. We're going to this model because of curriculum. So my hope is that over time we can go back to an in-person model, especially if our health and safety measures allow for it, and really sort of figure out the curriculum piece. I know it's challenging, but I don't want to set us up and manage us into a remote model here on out through the end of the school year. I understand that's not the plan right now. The plan is to do this through January, but if we don't have what we want to do coming out of that, we're going to manage ourselves into a remote model that I just don't think it's best for kids. The last thing I'll just say is I started at the beginning of this call to say that, you know, I've been on Zoom meetings since 7:30 this morning for my job. I do mostly Zoom meetings for my job all the time, all day, and being on the computer all day makes me an unhappy person, but it definitely makes me more tired. It makes me probably a little bit more cranky. I'm much more distracted in my day-to-day items. I have another screen here that I could search the web and see who's winning the presidential race right now. And so I'm a middle-aged adult, professional adult, and those things are real to me. The last one that I'm lonely during the day. I'm staring at screens, but really, so we're going to be putting our students early as 12, 13, 14 years old into this environment. And so while I think we could be delivering more curriculum to them, we really have to think about the mental health aspect of this, because it's real. I think anybody who has a job that they're doing Zoom all day will attest to it. It's not the same. It's not engaging. The building of relationships is not the same as in person. And so this is something that, as Andrea said, it weighs really heavily on me because it's real. And I don't think we want to be doing that model of caring for kids between March of last year through June. Yeah, I get that right. March of this year through June of next year. It's a long time, and I don't feel it's best for, not only best for kids, I don't think it's best for us as humans. And so if health and safety parameters allow us to be back to some form of a hybrid model, I feel very strongly and passionately that that's what we should be working towards. So sorry, that was longer than Norm's explanation. I apologize. But I am ready, I think, to move forward with what's been proposed. I think with those very strong needs on my end to have us working on technology, on figuring out the next iteration, and then a real clarity for our parents on how their students can have more in-person instruction if that's what they feel is best.
Jim, thank you. I think the marching orders, I think it's fair. I think it's right. I think we will continue and be deliberate and purposeful. And I appreciate the regular reports at board meetings. I think that's important. Matt and I spoke about technology needs to have an order ready for tomorrow between $12,000 and $15,000 regarding screens and cameras and microphones. And though document projectors are a little bit back ordered, he's got a sense of what works. At the next, we'll talk about this later on in the agenda, the next board meeting, we're going to have a public hearing about all the ESSA funds and all the money, that we've done, that we can actually be transparent what we purchased with all this. I think it gives us some time. I know it's not, it's, you know, we've talked a lot about there is no perfect solution. There's probably not even a good solution, but we're going to continue to improve our practice, improve what we do. I work with extraordinary people who care deeply, who want to make this better at all levels, at all grades, at all instances. So I look forward to reporting out, look forward to digging in, look forward to being creative and reaching out to other schools as well. So I think it moves us for the next few weeks, and certainly the expectations are high, and you've been clear about where we need to be in, you know, first or second week in January.
And I would like to say one thing, Steve. We have community members who know how to do this model, and I really encourage you to reach out to them. You know, Kearsarge is an example. You know, I've talked to Laura Newman. So she gladly would help this board implement this in our schools, you know, and I think it's great that we can not reinvent the wheel, but discuss it with other districts to see how they're doing it and be able to talk to them. And I really would like to talk to them, you know, and I think it would be a great way to do that. The other thing I just want to discuss briefly with you is, you know, if we're having a long lead time getting this stuff, it's a concern to me because, you know, if we want this in January, I want to know, is it possible, you know, Hopkinton's awesome, okay? And Hopkinton can find things for us that maybe will avoid this lead time. Is it possible that if we have a list, and let's say Matt finds out at 18 months to get something, that we could say, hey, community, this is what we need. There's potentially a business owner out there that maybe specializes in this, you know. Heck, I was even thinking about, call me crazy, checking with my German office in Germany to see if they have the technology equipment for the school district, because I'm trying to think of any way to bring what it needs to be for this district. I don't know if there's a policy or a loophole that we have to bypass in order to do that.
I appreciate the care. I also, you know, Matt has done a good job, and remember, we're a systems approach with very small people working on certain things. So I think we're doing the best we can. I don't think what we're facing is different than any other districts facing, but certainly we'll certainly turn over every rock. But Matt's on it. He's doing great. We're trying to figure out, there's some stuff more available. I think we'll be able to improve what we're doing in the time frame that was been given us.
So you're committed to that deadline, you know, January. I mean, we don't know the date yet, but I'm just saying I want to have an opportunity that if we can't get it in that window, we give the community, if the board allows it, an opportunity. Because I really think that they return, you know, they can find it.
Sure. We will certainly look at everything, but I appreciate the procurement experience of Matt and how it fits into our technology needs and our technology experience and our ability to service, maintain, warranty, and work with vendors. I have full faith, and Matt knows if I bother him less, he'll probably have more time to do it. So, but I think I can't believe we can be in a better shape than not having Matt and his procurement experience and his connections in New Hampshire. He's
awesome. So I was throwing out an idea, but thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm just being on. Yep. No.
Yeah.
Steve, last week when we met, we had a conversation around, it was around the holiday schedule and around, you know, Thanksgiving and travel and adult travel, and whether or not there was a possibility that that staff would be able to test out, for lack of a better term, test out of the quarantine for those 14 days. And it's still relevant to this conversation because in order to have that 1 week in school, we still need to have the staffing available in order to accommodate. So I'm just wondering if you can give an update on what you've learned.
Sure. So, and of course, K through 6 will be in the day after Thanksgiving as well. So we asked the administration to get, you know, we had numbers and now we get hard numbers, and the communication between our building administrators and staff at this point, we think it is manageable with our current sub roster. Of course, that could change, but we had this discussion today at leadership. As I said, I'd be absolutely thrilled to do a half day at kindergarten. Notice I said half day at kindergarten as opposed to full. So that's that piece. The second piece is, and I appreciated the idea. So right after the meeting, I went, Nicole Masters, our Maple Street nurse, is our district liaison on COVID issues. She connects with DHHS. So I went and talked with Nicole and talked to her about the notion. So there's a couple of different nuances to this. One thing that the board, superintendent and the board can say, our teachers are essential workers, and in some guidelines, they can work, even if they travel outside of New England, there is a guideline that they can work on Monday after Thanksgiving. Now, we've held quarantine just because of our goal not to spread and all that fun stuff. But would if a teacher or a support staff member who couldn't work remotely, who was in school, if they did travel over the break and came back, would that test give another layer of protection for us and enter our schools? So Nicole talked to DHHS, and they held firm in the notion, both sides, one, they can work, but we don't test out of quarantine. But I met with Nicole and asked her to research, because I had heard Massachusetts now has instituted a testing out of quarantine, and they have. So in Massachusetts, you have a choice. You can either quarantine or test it. So if the board decided to, right now, I think we can handle it within quarantine because of the roster that we're at. But if, say, it changes the next few weeks and we get nervous, we could, and I think we do have to talk just with the staff about, whether it's mandatory testing or things like that, but we can provide the opportunity for testing out of quarantine. Because I think I wrote in an email or board notes or somewhere, we'd have to also talk about that our insurance carrier, like if you're sick, our insurance carrier pays for the COVID test. But if it's about a travel quarantine, it's not, because it's not a health insurance piece, it's a work piece. So we would just have to, and we have some time, it's not tomorrow, but we'd have to work on how we're going to pay for that test, because it's not an insurance thing. So, sorry, it's a little long, but first, I think right now, what we know on the data right now is we can manage it with our sub roster. B, if we get worse, we could follow the Massachusetts guideline, test out of quarantine and pay for it. I mean, we're not, because it's an extra layer of essential worker, I think we're okay there. And we just have to, Michelle, you and the board, and we just have to figure out how we're going to pay for this. We had a brief discussion today. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it helps me. Appreciate that. So are we, I don't want to cut off conversation on the middle high school. It feels like we're all in a similar spot. I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to say before we move on to Mr. Carosa.
Could
Mr.
I
Carosa's school.
say something about it?
Please do, yes.
I just wanted to say that I support the plan being proposed, and that I spoke to a fair number of other students and a couple of teachers who also support the plan being proposed. There seemed like there was a pretty good consensus that the current schedule obviously does not work, but specifically that the unstructured remote days are really, really challenging, like across the board. And that it would be better to be at home on a Zoom class than to be at home without any structure. And like, I know you're talking about the negative mental health implications of being on a computer all day, which I experience, but I also experience it on the like completely unstructured days, because it's really hard to kind of figure out what you're supposed to be doing. And I think a lot of other people are experiencing that too. So yeah, I don't know, just in general, people seemed to like the idea, especially of treating the period from now until mid-January as like a test period for this schedule, because people like recognize that it isn't perfect and there are like some criticisms. So that's kind of where I am. I really like the idea of testing it out and reevaluating. And I think that was everything I was trying to say.
Thanks, Mia.
Can I speak about it really quickly as well?
You sure can.
I really like the proposed schedule as well. And I sent out a short survey just across social media to see people's general feelings about it. And overall, I think a lot of people did think it was a good idea. The ones who didn't seemed more concerned about the work, but the more I thought about that, I think what's most challenging at the moment in terms of work is when in classes like math or different sciences where you can't really learn it very well on your own, you have, sometimes 2 or 3 days over the weekend in between classes, and you start to forget stuff, and then you have bits and pieces, and it just becomes really hard to learn. And I think that that's what people are struggling with. And there's also the fact that at the moment there's no time to meet with teachers. And so if you are confused in the in between days, there isn't any time for clarification. I know my math teacher is giving up both of his prep blocks right now just to meet with people, which isn't something he should have to do. And I think it's obviously not perfect, but that it's a better solution, and that especially if we implement tools like, what's it called, breakout rooms or things like that, that it can be more engaging. So yeah.
Thank you. So let's move on to Harold Martin School, and Bill and his team proposed a scheduling change on Mondays, and so I sort of see where we're at with sort of that proposal and how to move forward.
Thanks to everybody. This will be brief. Based on parent and school board feedback, we're going to put aside our request for significant planning time on Mondays for HMS right now. We do want to thank those who came up with some, creative ideas, staff and others. Right now, we're feeling a pretty strong support for our hybrid program. And one of the nice things about parent conferences, and I've talked to many teachers, they received a lot of very positive feedback about how things are going, even the, as I call them, the home days, which I think we struggle with a little bit. It's a lot of work, but also we struggle with how effective they are. But the funny thing is, the majority of feedback at the parent conferences was very positive about that. I don't have like hard data, but anecdotally, that's what I'm hearing from teachers. We sort of reserve the right, maybe down the road. Steve and I have been talking about some creative ideas to have, some extra time built in the schedule, but it'll have a very minor impact on families if we go down that sort of road. So brief, but I think, clearly that the town, spoke, and I appreciate that. The comments I received were direct but very respectful, and that's always a good thing in a democracy. So during our election week, I wanted to mention that too.
Any questions or thoughts for Bill?
Well, I would just want to say, I'll go. Bill, I would just say that, so I was, even though the sentiment from the parents and last week was not for your proposal, I was certainly ready to consider at least a day, because I do think we are also the employer here. We're not just, we do represent the town, but we're also the employer. And I did get a sense that the teachers were feeling stressed and perhaps at a breaking point, perhaps not. And if you're telling me that they're not, I accept that. But I also want you to know that I appreciate that. And even if it's not a popular decision across the board, we have to do what's right for our employees. And I understand that, and I'm open to that. And I urge you to come back if you feel that things are not heading in a good trajectory.
Thank you, Seth. I think we really appreciate that.
Bill, I had a great parent teacher conference. It was great. I always enjoy that time and everything. And last week I had a lot of thinking after that meeting, and I wanted to sleep on it, and I kept sleeping on it. And I kept waking up and sleeping on it, and I didn't get a lot of sleep this last weekend. But I think one thing that's important to me to share, with the community is that, I know it's a lot of work right now, for our teachers, and for you, and for parents and stuff. And I didn't want to come across last week that our teachers are babysitters, because they're certainly not. They're educators. And when I had said last week, the working parent can't afford that time off, I wanted to make it clear that it wasn't faced to the teachers in that inappropriate way. It wasn't, because I value everything they're doing. My biggest concern, that I run through my head a lot, is that when you approach the board and you ask us for a day, the first thing that popped in my head was, are they having enough time to assess our kids? Are they having enough time to be able to say, you know what, I'm not reaching Bob, I'm not reaching Julie, I'm not reaching, because these kids at these younger age need the support. And I want to make sure the board member, I'm giving that to those kids, because for me, this is a situation in their life where, you know, we're gonna look back on it. You know, they're not gonna have this hopefully in the next years to come. But I want to make sure that they're getting the right assessments and everything that we can do in order to make sure that they're having a path moving forward. And I just wanted to have that conversation with you that we're getting that. And I'm sorry.
No, that's great. The whole problem with everything right now is we're trying to find that sweet spot. We've been given a really tough scenario with the risk of catching a pretty tough virus, and so as a school, as a district, we decided the 6 feet factor was what we wanted to go by, which of course meant that we had to do a hybrid. So it means we see kids less. And so we're just trying to find, the sweet spot of that risk versus reward sort of thing. And I do understand too, economically and mentally, parents need daycare and they need to go to work. And that, was brought loud and clear. So I think our proposal at the time, we were thinking that this would be a change that would not upset the apple cart too much. But I think perhaps, is a bit too much of an ask. Like I said, I think we may come back with something that will, I think, have not a very significant impact on families, but we're not ready for that tonight. But teachers are okay. They're I've never been more impressed with the staff at Harold Martin this year, and very, very proud of them. If I can say that as an old guy, I think I probably have the right to say that. And but it hasn't been easy. And the other thing too, I think we're finding that that was good about parent conferences is teachers aren't receiving the same level of feedback from the community because they don't see any community. They might see them in the community at soccer games, but they're not coming into the building. We always had a very vibrant volunteer program at Harold, and obviously that's not happening. So we see each other a lot and we try to support each other a ton, but we're not getting that feedback from the community you just normally get when people volunteer in your room or in the library. So yeah, it's just a struggle for all of us, whether you're talking high school, Maple here, and we're trying to find the right spot, and we're trying to be caring and kind to everybody when we try to understand the situation that each other is in, whether it's finding daycare for your child or trying to get to work on time. So yeah, just thank you for the support, and we're doing okay. Very proud of the staff. I really am.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate it.
Bill, you don't need any excuses to say that you're proud of your staff, by the way. So that's good. Any other thoughts on Harold Martin? All right. So next item is winter sports. And so Steve, was Dan going to be joining us?
Yeah, and I think we'll do a swap. We'll demote some of our administrators. Chris and Rebecca will hang for the high school winter sports, but if you don't mind, we'll demote some people.
Thank you all.
Like Mandy and Bill. And let's see. Who am I? I don't want to do the wrong people. Matt enthusiastically wave the hand. Oh, there's Amy. All right. And then how'd I do? I think I did all right. And then Dan's got his hand up. So as Dan slides over, so as we did in the fall, and Dan can report out about, how things went, not just wins and losses, of course, but how we handled the pandemic and how lessons we've learned as we head into now our second season. The first season's not over yet, though. As Dan and I always used to at the end say a third of the year. We're not quite there. But Dan, thanks for coming over. I appreciate if you want to give an update of how things went in the fall and what our thoughts are for the winter, that'd be great.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I want to start this by thanking you guys. It was about 2 months ago, I came to you and I said, look, I'm asking you to trust me to trust our players, to trust our fans, to trust our parents, and let's give fall sports a go. You guys agreed to do that. You gave us this opportunity. We created a regional schedule. We played schools that were in our cohort, if you want to call them a cohort, across the board. We screened our athletes on a daily basis. Our kids wore masks. Our opponents, virtually all the time, certainly for the regular season, wore masks. I remember Rob saying at one point, I want to go to a game at the end of the season and you see 90% of the kids wearing masks. I think anybody who saw the 2 soccer games these last 2 days, including 2 teams that have not worn masks all year long, our opponents, virtually every kid on that field was wearing a mask. When necessary, we quarantine players. When necessary, we quarantine coaches. And when necessary, we cancel games. We did those things. And I'd asked you guys to trust me and trust what we were working on in August, and you did it. Over the last 2 months, I'd like to report that we had a very successful regular season, that we played 5 weeks of some fantastic games and meets across the board. Our middle school and high school teams qualified and competed for their playoffs. Our middle school girls cross-country team were the Tri-County League champions. Our high school girls cross-country team were the Division III champions, and they're competing this Saturday in the Meet of Champions. And our girls soccer team just won their playoff game today, and they're playing for a state championship on Sunday. For any fans who are watching, they're playing Campbell down at Campbell on Sunday. Campbell beat Raymond today. So, that's just that part of it. Anecdotally, there were 2 things that really stuck out to me about this season. First of all, when I saw you in August, one of my big concerns was that our kids would go elsewhere, and that if we didn't offer sports, they would go elsewhere. They didn't. We offered sports and our kids stayed home. We had tremendous participation on our teams. You guys saw it on our middle school teams and how many kids played middle school sports. We didn't have cuts. We had extra kids playing soccers in some cases. We were the ones who controlled who they played, where they played, when they played. And I really think that is an important aspect of all of this, that we are the ones calling the shots. We know, and I've heard a couple of you talk tonight about, keeping our kids occupied and keeping them focused. If we don't offer sports, kids will look elsewhere. And then it does concern me what can of worms we're opening. Finally, anecdotally, I can't even tell you the number of parents who have stopped me and have said to me, hey, I want to thank you for everything. You cannot believe the change in my kid since last spring when they had nothing. And now they're playing sports, they're out with their friends, they're active. For kids who may be remote, it is that opportunity to schedule their days, to come in and play and have some structure. Anecdotally, I'm the one thanking you, but I'm passing this along because a lot of people have said that to me. So that's my start. Moving on to the winter. Sorry, I had all these notes. Moving on to the winter. In the fall, you'd asked me about a couple different organizations, and there are 2 big ones that impact us. It's the NFHS, the National Federation of High Schools, and the NHIA, New Hampshire Interscholastic Athletic Association. The NFHS, National Federation of High Schools, lists sports in low, moderate, and high risks. You may remember in the fall, we had football was a high risk. The others were all low or medium or moderate risks. Going into the winter, we have 2 low risk sports, our alpine and Nordic skiing. We have no high risk sports. There are none that are qualified in the NFHS as high risk sports. And we have 3 that are considered moderate. We have swimmers who compete with bow as individuals. We have ice hockey and we have basketball, and they're all in the moderate standpoint there. The other organization is the NHIA. And one of the things that the NHIA has done, they have pretty much kept the low impact sports, the low risk sports unchanged. For the moderate sports, they have pushed back the start dates similar to what they did in the fall. They're trying to buy school districts more time to see what happens. We know this is a long process and things change pretty quickly. So they have pushed things back to the point where we are looking at starting interscholastic basketball games, for instance, and that's kind of the biggie. Interscholastic basketball games in the middle of January. We're not looking at starting till then, almost 2 months away. It gives us a lot of opportunity to get these kids, first of all, prepared to play basketball, but second of all, to see what's going on. Where are we going to be as a state, as a community, as a country in 2 months? That's a long time frame. My plan, hope, recommendation, I was actually talking about the different sports. Swimming, First of all, I've been talking to Bo about what's going to happen with swimming. They are working with pools, and we will see what happens, whether they're going to allow us to participate or not. Before I come to you, we need to figure out what we can do with them. Ice hockey has been a little bit of a challenge because NEC has said that schools cannot use their ice. I've been in contact with John Stark and the athletic director over there. He has worked with Tri-Town Arena and has got some times and dates where we can use the rink there. We're also looking at Everett. We're looking at the Ice Den. And we've talked to some of the other colleges, St. A's and some of the others, to see if we can find ice 10. Obviously, you need ice to play hockey. At that point, once we have ice worked out, we've talked to John Stark some more. I will be talking to you more about ice hockey and hopefully moving forward with that. The biggie, I guess, is the basketball, because obviously that is our gym and it's the one that's closest to us. My plan, hope, recommendation is to move forward with basketball. The NHIA has done some different things, as I said, with pushing back start dates. For high school, they are authorizing open gyms to start on November 30th. This would be open gyms where teams can get in. They would get in, they would practice, they would shoot around, they would have skills and drills, basically. The one caveat to that is because we have one gym in the whole district, what I would like to do is actually start middle school basketball this coming Monday. And that way we have the month of November. What we would be doing is we would have one team a day going to the gym, whether it's a girls team on Monday and the boys on Tuesday or whatever. They would be able to get into the gym. They would all be able to play skills and drills of basketball throughout the month of November. This is the time where they can actually get in the gym. Once the high school gets in, it's very difficult to find gym time. On November 30th, we would open the gym up for the high school teams. We would do the same kind of thing. We'd have girls one day, boys the next. Probably what we do is about an hour and a half practice or skills and drills, hour and a half, 2 hours for one of the high school teams, whether it's boys or girls. Stop, clean the gym, have a middle school team come in for a short amount of time as well. And we would do that for about 2 weeks. In the middle of December, it's about the 14th or 15th, I forget what the Monday is right now, but the 14th or 15th is when practices can actually start for the high school teams. And we would do that with the idea of selecting teams. For those of you who know basketball, we are not going to have swingers. We're going to have true teams, and when we're trying to limit the interaction between teams and things like that. And then games are slated to start. The NHIA said January 11th, whether we start the 11th or the 18th, which is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, or somewhere around there. We're talking the middle of January for games. So that's kind of the schedule with how we would do things. Competition-wise, as in the fall, we'd be looking at a completely regional competition. I've already talked to Bo, John Stark, Merrimack Valley, Hillsborough, Kearsarge, schools like that. We would be playing one team a week across the board, boys, girls, middle school. So we don't have numbers of different teams coming into our gyms and stuff, and we're not going to multiple places. I have talked to all of the other schools involved and said, you know, my guess is the school board is going to, like they did in the fall, say that our kids are wearing masks. And if that is the case, we're going to expect you guys to wear masks too. And all the schools that I have talked to have said, yes, if that's what Hopkinton wants, we will be doing it. Several of them are going to do it anyway. Other ones have said, if that's what it takes for games, we are fine doing it. They showed this fall that they were willing to do that. Excuse me. Fans in our buildings, we're going to have very limited fans. We are hoping to live stream basketball games, and we're exploring putting a camera in the gym so we can live stream games. I think a best case scenario, we would be looking at 2 fans per player. That could be modified or pulled back. We could be looking at 2 fans per senior. I would love to have senior parents be able to see their kids their last time through. And if we have to play games, then we would fall back even further and say no fans in the gym. I hope I don't get to that, but that would be an option. So why should we do this? And I can get into nuts and bolts if you want to, but that's kind of the overview of what we're doing. And I just like to finish with why we should do this. First of all, anecdotally, again, we've talked about what this fall season meant for these kids. We have 5, 6, 10 kids who are basketball players. This is their sport. And they've been looking for this, and this is their outlet. A couple of you've talked again about the mental health aspect. It has such an impact on these kids. The second thing is, as I said before, in this case, we are the ones who control who they're playing or who they play, where they're playing, when they're playing. If we don't offer this, these kids are going to be all over the place. I've already seen flyers about these AAU teams that are looking for gyms, and are looking for players, and they will have kids all over the place. And these kids, we don't know what they're going to be doing or where they're going to be.
Oh, I think you froze.
You did. There you go. You're back.
I'm back. Thank you. Finally, for my last point, I'm gonna quote Rob. Rob, hope that's okay. You got that?
We'll see in a minute, Dan.
Rob said earlier today, let's trust the people who are professionals. I hope this fall that we demonstrated that we have a plan to make this work. We have a plan. We also have a plan to pull the plug if we have to. We're not planning on putting our kids in risk. We're giving them an opportunity to do something and kind of test the waters. If we move down this road and we have spikes, whether it's in school or state or whatever, then we cancel games, we cancel practices, we quarantine kids if we have to. I think we've demonstrated that we would do that in this fall, and I hope again, as you did in the fall, you trust us, and we move forward in the winter with winter sports. That's kind of my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions or nuts and bolts questions that you have.
Thanks, Dan. And I just also, you started off your presentation by, thanking us. And I just want to thank you for working with us over the fall and the summer when you came in, and your flexibility and then for, helping the athletes with masks. I know that was, that was a hard discussion. We talked a lot about that, but I just want to thank you and your coaches for, for sticking with it, for implementing that, which I know it sometimes wasn't a popular strategy, but, working with our players, but then, I think even more importantly, working with the other teams and the other districts, and advocating for masks and just helping everybody kind of get over that hump. I think it was great, and going to soccer games and seeing both teams, competing, while being safe. I think it was it was just great to see. So I do want to acknowledge and thank you for helping make that happen. I think it's really important.
Thank you.
Questions for Dan?
I do have one question. I do want to echo a little bit of Jim's feedback there. I went to almost every game this year, Dan. We bumped into each other. We said hi every time. And I do want to say to the board, I was extremely impressed with how professional everybody was. Dan had a great system, signs up. He walked down the sideline handing everyone a mask, but they didn't have one. And it was really well organized. And I was really impressed, and it was great to see the kids out there. So I do want to say thank you, and Dan, we trust for that part. That was really great. The first question I had was, is there a capacity that you were thinking of for the team, like a limit? Like, they talk about distance when it comes to teams, like, we have a lot of people who try out for basketball. Does it get to the point where you're thinking, there's 5 players playing and we have 3 subs, and that would be it for a team?
Sure. So I've talked to my coaches, and I've worked a lot with them. One of the issues that we have to socially distance on the bench. And so, how many seats can you get on our bench and keep them 6 feet apart? That's part of our plan. The coaches also, basically what we came up with is 11 players per team. And the reason we came up with 11, that would be 11 on the varsity and 11 on the JV and 11 on the middle school teams. It's a little bit smaller in the middle school teams than usual. The high school teams, I think total number would be about the same, but we usually have some swingers. We're gonna discourage that. We're trying to keep these kids at least somewhat separate so that when they come in, we can keep them separate. 11 is a nice number because if you have one kid who is injured or who does have to go into quarantine, that you can still do practices in terms of a scrimmage or mini drills and things.
And a follow-up is the circulation in the gym. How is that? How are we with circulation? I'm sorry, Rob, I didn't mean to.
No, it's fine.
So we, it's part of our plan. We're getting some Siemens work done, and then we'll bring in a balancing report, a balancer to check the gym and the places. But with the small number of people that Dan's talking about in that huge space, we think we're okay. But prior to, as soon as we get that Siemens work done, we're going to bring a balancer in, and we'll be able to tell you exactly what the air circulation is. But again, it's a huge place with small people in there. It's a good starting point.
Rob?
Yeah, my question was similar to what Norm was bringing up. In the fall, we talked about masks and being outside was the great equalizer. So now we're inside. So now, what do we know, or what are other school districts learning about, and maybe what people have done in the fall, playing basketball in different places? How is being inside different in terms of a risk potential? What do we know? That's the question.
I am not a scientist. I mean, it's pretty clear that the risk is higher when you're inside. I mean, it's pretty clear wearing a mask outside is about the safest you can be right now. Wearing a mask while you're inside is certainly preferable to not wearing a mask. We are not the only school district that is going through this. Most school districts around do seem to be planning on playing basketball. Many of them are not going to require masks of their teams and their players. The ones in our immediate area, I would say more probably are saying, let's go forward, but let's go forward with our players masked. And I think if that's what we decide to do, then that is absolutely fine.
I had a couple of questions. So, I guess sticking with the, there you are, I'm trying to look at all the faces. Would we be able, and this might be more of a question for Steve, would we be able to run the fans in the gym at 100% during play just to increase the air turnover rate?
Yep, we can certainly set that, and yes, so we will work on that. Yep.
Okay, that would make me feel a little better. One thing, Dan, that I struggle with a little bit, one thing I loved about fall, not just that we were outside, but was the approach that you guys took as far as not doing any cuts, because it allowed more kids to play. And I don't know if there are any other, I know we have a set amount of coaches, but if there's any other creative way, if we have kind of an overflow of kids who, maybe 15 kids at the middle school, like this is their sport. And now 4 of them are going to be remote for a couple of weeks, and they're not, getting to play basketball. I don't know if you thought of any other creative solutions that might just be able to help address those kiddos.
I was going to put a second gym in the budget, but I assumed you guys wouldn't go for it.
We tried.
That is a problem. Basketball, it is the hardest one, and I understand that, but we just are limited. We have one gym in the district. We have 6 teams that need to play on one gym. And already, when I'm trying to put together a practice schedule, and a practice schedule that includes time in between each team so that we can, do some standard of disinfecting the gym in between each team. I mean, it's like an hour a day of practice that is going to be lost because we are wiping down the gym between teams. And to try to make more kids in the gym, we just can't do it. The one thing that, has worried me from the beginning, and I'm going to be completely upfront, is that when you do tryouts for these teams, to say that, this is a tryout to make this team, but if you're not feeling well, don't be there, then we're giving kids a double standard. And I think one of the important things, and I've talked to my coaches about that, is we are starting an open gym on, ideally next Monday for middle school. Let's have middle school tryouts be the entire month of November through an open gym, and eventually working our way up to practices. So if kids are not feeling well as we get to the quote unquote tryouts, the coaches have evaluated them. And these kids have a lot of the coach had a big chance to see these kids and pick the ones who are most deserving. Similarly, for the high school, we would do the same thing starting in December. And although we actually say we're starting tryouts on the 15th, the coaches will have had 2 weeks. It will be every other day, but still 2 weeks of seeing these kids previously and having an idea of where kids best fit. Andrea, I would love to have every kid play basketball. Trust me, I'm a basketball player. Middle school, I was actually on like the B team in middle school, and I know kids develop differently. We just don't have the space. Sorry.
Other thoughts? I'll be honest. I worry about basketball. Not only that it's indoors, which we know is a higher risk, but Dan, I've played basketball against you, and you're very good. I have trouble guarding you, but when I'm guarding you, I'm spending the whole time, facing you. We're it's a physical game, and it's a long game, and so you're guarding players in front of their face the whole time, and so masks are great, and I think masks are definitely, at least in my mind, a definite need. But I just worry about the way that the social interaction on a basketball court happens, which is completely different than the social interaction on a soccer field or a soccer pitch, where you have very limited, some pushing and shoving, kicking the ball, but it's not, minutes upon minutes of sprinting back and forth, guarding players and switching teams. So anyway, so I struggle with it. I don't struggle with your plan. I think generally, starting slow and having an open gym and sort of building our way up, because it's not a season that's going to start right away. So we do have time to think about, what the world around us looks like as we sort of think about bringing other teams in and having the game. So I'm not opposed to sort of starting out slow and seeing where we go. And I guess the only other piece that's and I've talked to Steve, who's explained, being able to stream the game, so having a camera that can follow the ball. I do, just thinking about numbers, and I think I said earlier, math isn't my strong point, but if we have, 2 teams, and we have the coaches, and then we have 2 parents per team, I mean, we're starting to get up to, 70 plus people in a gym, right? Because you would have 2 teams of 11, that's 22, 2 sets of parents per kid, so that's another 44. So, and then coaches and onlookers, whoever else is there. So anyway, we're getting to a number of bodies in a confined space in winter in a pandemic that I worry about. Anyway, so I just really think about the how we think about the spectators, because we start getting to a very large group in a confined space in winter with a lot of activity and running back and forth. And anyway, I just think about the health and safety piece and how we control it. We have time to think about that. So this is more just like a reaction than it is any sort of mandate. But I do think the less amount of people who are not required to be there is probably more likely to see success in sort of a season going forward. So that's sort of where my head is right now.
Sure. I mean, we're talking the middle of January, and it could be the middle of January. We say, hey, this is crazy. We can't do this anyway. Or we might say, you know what, 2 fans per player is too many. As I said before, I would love to have at the very minimum 2 fans per senior, just to give those parents a chance to be there. Having been the parent of a senior last year, I know how important that is. But you know what? I think these parents would say, hey, the drop, bad choice of words. The end all would be, let's play the games. So let's cross that bridge when we get to January.
Chris, did you want to add some stuff?
Yeah, just from my perspective, I've been coaching AAU ball this past fall. My daughter played throughout the summer, and I have yet to hear of any cases of COVID being spread amongst the team. I think if we maintain our social distancing, one of the rules that have been instituted is that once they come off the floor, they're wearing masks on the bench. I do believe that we can do it safely. At AAU tournaments, they are strictly enforcing 1 parent right now per player to manage the crowd size. And there have been checks and balances at the front door, temperature checks, and doing the typical COVID screening questions. And those are some of the things that Dan and I have talked about with Steve, and trying to also, how do we manage that at the middle school level too? We have a game director that would be willing or be able to do some of this work and keeping track of who's coming in and who's not allowed in until maybe a JV game gets finished and we get everybody out. And then we'd have to look for another staff member to do the same for middle school games that are right after school. So right now, I will say that I would be comfortable with it, because I'd be a hypocrite if I said no, because I coach AAU and I coach my daughter here locally in Concord, and we've been at the Rim in Hampton, we've been at the Barn in Hampton, and in those tournaments, I haven't heard anything. I've also had been heavily involved in, yes, softball is an outdoor sport, but I was heavily involved in USA softball for the state of New Hampshire. trying to come up with the guidelines there, and very happy that USA Softball had no cases linked to softball organizations or tournaments over the summer. So why do I bring that up is as long as we continue to work hard at taking our precautions and putting those in place, I think we can continue to do that safely. And, I think our students and families are getting better at completing the health screening form. If we want to make this happen as a community, we have to come together as a community to do our best to try and make that happen for those student athletes. And from a personal experience, 2 years ago, I had a cousin who, my cousin's daughter she went to Newt High School, and they didn't have a varsity program her senior year, and she was 80 points shy of 1,000 points. Those are just disappointing moments. And I don't know if we will have somebody like that this year. We did with Kevin Newton Delgado last year, but to have the opportunity to play your last senior game on your home court, I think would be meaningful for our seniors. We lost that opportunity a couple of years ago, if you remember, when we had the leak in the gym. If we can utilize our gym to allow for our kids to play with precautions in place, if it means that we have to go down to one parent, willing to support that. But, speaking on behalf of the athletes and the work that Dan, is trying to do and putting together these plans, I think we can make it work.
Chris, was the season that you're talking about the AAU during the summer or the fall?
Both.
Okay, and this would be winter, so it's a little bit different season that we'd be talking about. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's correct. I mean, I acknowledge that. I'm just talking about, just my experience thus far.
Yeah.
And it's also the practices as well. So, 2 to 3 times a week over the summer, and throughout the fall, my daughter and I have been in gyms.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think, Chris, actually, you bring up a really good point that I assumed, but I also verbalized it as well. Because basketball is in our school buildings, I would expect that we would follow all of the same, regulations that we do when anybody enters our school buildings, as far as, you said the screenings, you gotta complete the survey, you gotta get your beep thing on your head to make sure you're not too hot, and everybody wears a mask at all times.
Yeah, our temperatures are checked every time we walk into the rim or our tournament. So, I always felt comfortable because they were making those, putting those precautions in place. And I would agree that, if we can work with, Noah Thompson to get those fans up and running, to full capacity to get that air exchange rate turned over, I think we can make it work with a limited number of parents coming in to see their children play.
And if I could speak to that too, every team that we played this year, not only did we screen our kids before we played, but every other team screened their kids too. So when we're talking about these kids playing basketball, they've all been screened, probably twice if they went to school that day too.
Other thoughts, questions, concerns from board members? Is everybody comfortable with sort of the game plan that Dan laid out? I'm hearing no concerns or comments, so I'm taking that as a yes. I'm taking silence as a yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think given all the increase the fan speeds, which I think Steve says he can do. We do all the testing per usual. We wear a mask the whole time. We stay 6 feet apart.
I mean, the bottom line to this is all these decisions have risk. There is a reward that Dan has articulated clearly to us. I trust the administration will keep a close eye and monitor it. And if we think the risks are increasing, then it's not worth the reward. But I'm certainly willing to head down this road and see where it takes us.
Dan, do you have enough from us for now?
I do. Thank you very much. If I could put a plug in, I think at some point HISA will ask about using the gym on Saturdays. It is the only gym in town, and I would love to see HISA have the opportunity to do that as well.
Well, you can stay because that's the next item on the agenda.
Oh, okay then.
Yep. So that's the
What a good transition, Dan.
That's the transition. So the next piece and is exactly that, the community use of buildings, and talking about youth sports. And originally, I was going to talk about, in the last couple of years, we've had last year we had the Kentucky Farmers Market use our schools, but actually I heard from Amy in the Facebook posting that they've moved to online. So, and pickup is my understanding. I haven't talked to Dave White about it, but so I think that's tabled. But really right now, the major use of our community use of our schools, as Dan just alluded to, would be youth sports in the winter. We've had, I mean, I think, so Dan, if you want to speak to the schedule, it's really Saturday and Sunday and the use, and then Monday morning, we do the disinfectant and we'd work with people to clean at the end of their session, work with HISA and to make sure kids moving, kids active in the gym is pretty important.
Sure. So the schedule, HISA really gets the gym on weekends. And when I say weekends, because of our schedule, as I told you, we lose like an hour a day just cleaning, disinfecting the gym. We are probably going to look at Saturday mornings doing some JV practices for the most part for us. This is going to replace the biddy ball that the coaches, unfortunately, biddy ball fans, if you're out there, I'm sorry, there's just no way of getting those kids in there. So biddy ball, I hope I'm not breaking the news to anybody, but it sounds to me like biddy ball won't happen. We will probably use that gym time for high school teams on Saturday mornings. Then Saturday afternoon, we've opened in the past and we plan to for HISA, so they can come in, they can do the practices, depending on the availability of Harold Martin and others, whether they can even practice there. They might have to use the high school for that, and they'll have games. I don't know what they're planning on games. That's probably something to talk to Skate about, whether it's just within the community, whether it's within other communities as well. That would be a HISA decision. Sunday mornings have usually been a time period also for HISA practices and things. And then mid-afternoon on Sundays, we do have an opportunity for the high school teams to practice, mainly because we often have games on Mondays. So that's kind of the schedule for HISA. It's Saturday afternoons for the rest of the day on Saturdays, and then Sundays probably till about 1 or 2, something like that.
Would HISA follow the same health and safety guidelines that we would follow for our teams?
I believe HISA would. I can't speak for Skate, but I know that they would love to get in. And if the stipulation from the board is that, hey, we expect you to follow the same recommendations as, as the school's laying out, I am pretty confident that they would adhere to that.
I don't
just jumped on the raise the hand issue on the thing too. So if there's any.
I spoke to Skate to pick his brain a little bit, and I asked Skate, did you have a proposal? Did you have something, to show the board? And he says, he would like to hear what we would like. What he would like to hear from us, what we would want to see in order for HISA to happen, which I think is very, I think respectful. And I'm a huge coach. I love basketball, but I think this board needs to be specific with what exactly we want if the community is going to be using it, regarding who's cleaning it, who's paying for it, and really be specific with what happens. We're talking just the high school gym. We're not talking Harold Martin, correct? That is off limits due to the construction and the flow of kids having to go through there, is much different than it was in the past. So we're specifically just talking about the high school gym. Is that correct? For HISA?
That wasn't clear to me.
No, it was, and happy to engage with Skate but right now it was a community use of an open discussion about the use of our buildings.
If Skate is on, why don't we just ask him to,
Yeah,
instead of stipulating?
Yeah, go for it.
Before we do so, can I just,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, Steve, I understand your last comment. Is your last comment that we should be specific around the community use for HISA of our buildings, or in general to talk about how we want to have our buildings open to the community? There's similar things, but I just want to make sure.
Sure. Right now, there isn't any request to use our buildings on the table right now, except regarding the youth sports. The Kentucky Farmers Market, I thought I was going to bring, to be honest, I thought I was bringing that forward tonight, but based on some research, it looks like they went to online. I'll verify that this week. Actually it was, because I always go to the principal about Maple, and Amy said, oh, Steve, Kentucky Farmers Market's going online. So
They
right
did.
now.
I can verify that for you. They did. That's
Yeah,
off the table.
And
So
so then
that's-
the only request we have now is from HISA. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
I just want to make sure that, okay. Because so if we want to bring Skate over, that might be helpful if he's willing. His hand's up. So.
But I want clarification from the board. Are we talking about just the high school? Or are we talking about Harold Martin Gym? That's where I'm confused about.
And I think we should ask Skate that because I don't
Okay.
know, we know what his needs
Okay.
are. So.
Got it. Thank you.
That's a good question to ask Skate.
All right.
Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Well, thank you for taking the time for this because this has been totally up in the air for a long time. We're looking for any gym time. We'd love to be in the high school, but any gym time. But I totally understand the building issue at Harold Martin and Maple Street is not that great anyway. But anything's better than nothing. So I guess we're looking at whatever you can give us, and then just give us guidelines of how we need to proceed after we're done with it, whether we need to pay your janitors or we have to get our own cleaning service to make it work. And I just want to let you know, we usually have about 150 to 180 kids on a normal year playing basketball from pre-K through high school. I'm hoping to have something for the little kids somewhere. So the bitty ballers, it might not be totally out, but we would just make the time we have work for as many kids as we can. It would be thinner for most, but like I said before, something's better than nothing. There are other options out there, like you said, AAU stuff. And I know that they're not wearing masks when they're playing. Once they're done playing, we would require everybody to wear masks the whole time. And the biggest thing I think on our end is we're a younger group, and the fans and parents would want to be there. So that's as far as games and stuff go. So I guess those are my 4 points that I want to throw out there on my end. But I'm willing to try to answer any questions on my end. But I'm looking for direction from you guys and whatever we can get on any gym. And that new gym would be great.
Skate, I'm happy to connect with you about what we need. You know, Michelle and I and Noah, happy to put together the precautions and see to make sure whether it's disinfecting or cleaning, whether it's contract to our custodians or something else. I'm happy to do that.
Great.
Mr. Murdo, I have a quick question for you. If you were to pursue HISA, would you fall under the formula like we did with the soccer club, playing only local? You have 150 kids. I mean, I know that the competition is kind of, you know, different between age groups, or are you looking to kind of have it be with other schools?
For this year, the MBL is not doing anything till January, if even that, for our third grade and up. So I would certainly lean on just doing all in-house. And with teams are smaller, we can make things work with a smaller group, and the amount of time we have is small too. So I think just staying in-house, keeping everybody in town is probably the best thing for everybody, and probably the only way it's really going to work safely on our end.
Thank you, sir.
Skate, you have 150 kids. Can you just talk about, like, it's been a little bit since my kids played HISA sports, and they haven't played basketball, I don't think, ever. So can you just talk just a little bit about, you know, how you do your program, and like how many teams are there at a time? Just give me a flavor of what a Saturday morning would look like.
All right, so we started the bitty ball. We'll start young. We actually did our pre-K stuff a few years ago. We started doing that. We kind of branched out on soccer end. The baseball, softball is kind of a little tougher on pre-K stuff, but basketball and soccer, we started programs there. So we probably have 10 to 15 kids there, and then we just go by grade, and it's usually, I don't know, 15 to 30, roughly 20 probably for each grade as we go up till second grade. And then third and fourth, we start grouping up together and separating out boys and girls. Last year, I think we had 6 total, 3 fourth grade teams. I think we had 2 girls and 4 boys. And then it thins out a little bit more as you get older, but I think we ended up with like 3 and 3. So I guess it's the same, but for the 5, 6, 7, 8, middle school takes care of a lot of that, but I try to get them more gym time for kids that want to play more. So we usually have 2 teams for boys and girls for that. And then with the high school started up a few years ago, we just, the kids that don't want to fit into the high school schedule, we just have the high school rec, and we usually just have 1 team for that. And so that's 17 playing teams, and then we have 4 groups of kids, basically clinic-ish drills and skills kind of stuff. So about 21 different groups-ish, depending on the year.
And then obviously for the younger kids, the parents stick around, right? And so
yeah, we kind of require them, especially for the younger ones, because the pre-K, they could go either way some of those mornings, and it's easier to have them there to lessen that the yelling part or screaming, and trying to get as much out of the kids who are kind of into it that day. But as they get older, it's definitely, but a lot of parents like to sit and watch and see everything, which would be kind of harder on this end. But we certainly can try to make things, that's going to be a tough one, the younger the kids, for our restrictions. But so that would be something to work on. Until we have gym times, I don't have to work on anything. So if we get gym times, I can start thinking about all that other stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, after I have more recently spent time watching Biddy Ball playing on the weekends, and honestly, that one I would be that's a little harder, because it's a lot of parents and a lot of kids, and usually the high school students are the ones who are helping, and that's just a lot of intermingling. I do know both my kids have played high school basketball and they love it. And by 3rd grade, it's like drop them at the door and leave. So you're really in there just with your team and coach. And they loved playing this fall. They actually really appreciated being able to play just within the district and play their friends.
Right. So soccer, we had, I actually ran the 2nd grade and under. We had 4 different groups for that too. Myself and some high school girls helped out the whole time. So we had probably about 80 kids every Saturday morning. And actually I'm doing it again this next Saturday because the weather is good, because basketball is kind of up in the air. So we're running again, and it worked out really well, where I just kind of ran everything with the girls helping. And it seemed, through what people were saying, parents leaving, and it worked out really well, because usually we try to set up teams, and who knows how good these kids are, and some team could be really good, and some team would be maybe a little on the shorter side. So we pick teams every week. We could find the stronger kids, kind of mix them in, and it seemed to work out really well. I don't know, there was still a lot of parents, but we could social distance outside. So the inside stuff, I would probably be leaning towards something like that. And possibly, I don't know, letting maybe 1 parent in. I don't know. You can tell us how many people we can let in the building, and then we can kind of work our way back from that. But it'll certainly be interesting.
Other thoughts or questions from board members?
I think for me, that the thing that comes up is consistency with what our general protocols are during the regular school week, and how we're, we've got a set of rules for Monday through Friday, and how do we make that jive with what happens on the weekend? And I think that needs to be thought through by someone as a part of what we do.
I think it makes sense, Rob. I mean, we can work together on that.
I struggle. I struggle with if them using the Harold Martin, with the facility project going on. If there was some type of guidance of flow, I'm under the impression that there's only one entranceway really to get to the gym, if I'm correct. And that is a lot of classrooms that are going by. And as you know, with younger students, they like to roam, and they like to go into things. Hey, mom and dad, this is my classroom, and then but it kind of defeats the whole purpose of it being clean and sanitized. So I just want to bring that to this board's understanding that I firmly believe that Skate's very good with taming people when it comes to behavior and stuff. Keeping kids in order. He's a great coach like that. But sometimes things are a little bit out of his control, and that's where I struggle a little bit at Harold Martin. I know gyms are so hard to get, but I do want to bring that to the board that there's only one way of getting into the gym, and that's where I get a little bit concerned.
So both of those back doors are not, you can't access them anymore.
So I mean, we can still park, like when my little one was at Harold, we still parked out front and we walked down the side and we went in as opposed to driving around. But we'll talk about it on a Monday meeting with Bill and with the group to see if we can safely on the weekends provide them. Because if we can, I'm with you. But if we can, we'll take a look at that. But I think you're right. It's not going to be parking down below, and we don't have the circle anymore. But I think there's a way to access it safely. But let's talk about it on Monday and bring it back.
Okay. I think that's fair.
Steve, do we have for our gyms, and I'll use the word capacity limit, but we do for our other spaces in our schools, and do we have that in our gyms? Because I guess just reflecting on the conversation we had with Dan, around varsity or basketball games and how many people we can have in, and I guess I'm just worried that like the number that came up with around 65 or 70 people for that felt like a lot in the gym, and I just hearing the number of bodies that HISA would attract and maybe have in the gym. Anyway, I don't know what our capacity limit is, but it feels like at some point we're going to have too many people in a space. But
yeah, no, I think it's, I think Chris did some calculations, if you remember, talking about graduation and stuff and how much we could have, and 6 feet apart. So I think we got to look at it. I agree. I think 60, 70 people, we're getting up, can we safely within social distancing have a capacity? I think we have to determine that and post that as the capacity and make sure, because right, if we want this, we want to do it safely for the participants, as of course in the school as well. So I agree with you. We can certainly look at that.
Are we making a decision on this as far as community use of buildings tonight?
No, so we've really just taken the temperature of where we are and some homework. And I think we do have some homework to work with Skate and Dan and look at numbers and make sure that the practices that are instilled during the week, the screening and the mask wearing, all this stuff, and make sure that's possible. So I just think it's to really just take the temperature on what would have to be instilled to make sure we provide kids movement and an opportunity to get out. So it was an action item tonight.
how do people? I mean, I guess how did the board members feel about this? Or are you comfortable with sort of something coming back to us in a couple of weeks, or any sort of guardrails? I'm unsure sort of what general feelings on the board are at the moment. So I hopefully maybe we're all comfortable with it. I haven't got a read.
I can just speak for myself. I think for basketball, I'm fine with what Dan put forward. So that's a separate conversation, but I think we moved beyond that. As far as HISA basketball, I'm fine with the third grade up basketball. I am concerned about having games at Harold Martin, regardless of what door you're coming in. I just know that even last year when the girls teams from town played, parents were on top of each other, and that's even if just two parents were coming, because that gym is so tight. I mean, there's no bleachers. You are on top of one another. And so as far as games at Harold Martin go, I would not be supportive of that, but I would be supportive of them using it for open gym or for practice. I think that would be fine.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that's just that's where I'm at. And I worry about the little kids, honestly. There's so many of them and so many parents. Maybe they would like to play outside or something. I just can't, I have a harder time, honestly, with a bunch of little guys in there all over each other like little bear cubs. So.
What I struggled a little bit was, when we had the soccer season, and I could be getting this backwards, the board strongly recommended our players wearing masks. And in the beginning, I think there was a conflict of interest on whether or not, if a team was playing on school grounds, whether or not they had to follow the same protocol. And I don't want to bump into that situation where if we allow people on school property, regardless if you're in high school, if you're in the high school, that you're still going to be following the same procedure. I think, Skate, you need, we talked about a proposal, what you're looking for from the board in order to maybe come back and see what you're looking for regarding to, if you need cleaners and stuff like that. I think that there needs to be some type of path maybe of what everyone's looking for in order to potentially go there. I need to see some type of proposal. I struggle with how this is to be clean, the turnaround time between game times. When you have an hour game, how long of the time is it cleaning the gym before another team comes in? I need to see some type of schedule and turnaround and commitment from your end on providing a safe environment to use our facilities.
I think working with Steve, I think whatever you guys say that we can do is what we'll end up doing, because right now we have nothing. So we will follow whatever rules you give us and to get in any of these gyms. And I understand the Harold Martin part. It's going to be a really tough one there as far as just getting in there. If we have to go the whole way, I love just going in the back door and out and you're done. But we could probably even, Maple Street is always going to be Maple Street. So it's a place, but it's not the greatest. But we'll be looking more for the high school and whatever time we get around the high school, middle school schedules. So we're open.
Okay, we'll connect next week and we'll bring something back on the 19th. Is that the next time?
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you for your time and good luck with the rest of your meeting. You might hear me again.
And Dan, is there anything else for us? If not, you can go enjoy your evening. Not that you're not enjoying it now.
No, I am. Nope. Thank you for listening, and sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan.
And I think we'll move Chris and Rebecca at the same time.
Okay, they can enjoy their evening too. Thanks, guys. So the next item is, let's see, where am I? We are at the decision-making matrix update.
Yeah, so I'll share the screen and let's see, does that work?
Yes.
Always like confirmation. So this is, earlier I did it about 3 o'clock, and at 3 o'clock we had the update from yesterday, the 4th, and it was 8.6. And I think we have, so that is still here in community spread, 1 to 10 is 8.6. And I think the 5th, November 5th is either 8.5 or 8.7. It's very, very close. So it was updated since, that's what I just moved quickly to see. So that's where we are. And I put the Word doc with live links in the support document. So if people want to check out the Merrimack County-based daily briefing or the Harvard Global Health Institute dashboard, those are available, live links in the support materials.
Thanks, Steve. Any questions on the matrix or where we're at? No? All right. Well, thanks for updating us on that, Steve, and keeping it going. And it's unfortunate that, our case counts across the state are rising. And so I think it's important to kind of keep keep that in mind as we're sort of looking ahead and the planning that we're doing. Appreciate that.
Just to jump in, sorry, it disappeared on me. You don't have to bring it back up. But one thing I was pinged on is just the fact that just to keep in mind, we have 12 active cases currently in Hopkinton, with 4 new cases today. So I just think that it's important for folks to realize that it's not just in the county, it's in our town. And I remember months ago when we got like our first positive case during the school year, and we were nervous, and it was, I think, 1 or 2 cases. So it's here as well.
Andrea, thank you for that update. I appreciate it.
All right, any other thoughts on the matrix? All right, so we're going to move up to the Hopkinton Building Committee and an update, and then we have an action item around the roof.
Sure. I will give a quick update, and I want to try to get this in for Seth for 8. So just a quick update regarding the facility project right now. Most of our work right now is over at Harold Martin. We had 3 new water tanks that arrived and installed, and things are looking great in order to get fire suppression up and running. Work is undergo on the fire suppression pump. That's going to be completed in the future. If you guys have been to Harold Martin, you'll see quite a bit of steel has been created, and it's looking good over there. That should be completed around November 15th, is my understanding. Probably one that's really important, secondary, we're going to be installing some new air units in the kindergarten. This will provide proper COVID air movement in that area, and that will be completed around November 30th. Maple Street, they still have a little bit more roofing to be completed by December 1st. That's looking great over there. And probably what's important to talk about tonight that's an action item is we're still having a little bit of leaking issues over there at the high school. And, I'm pleased to say we really have tried to find this so we no longer have leaks over there. And we've tried looking at alternative paths over there to get this problem resolved, but we're continuing to still have some problems with leakage, with some leaks. And through this process, they had submitted an add-on to help fix this area of leakage that's happening over at the high school, where they're going to remove and dispose some of the existing metal roof panels and dispose of some of the plywood and stuff to really try to get this buttoned up and really have no more issues with leaks over there. They really worked hard to narrow it down to what the problem was. And, the cost for this is $44,360. It's considered an add-on. When they submitted this bid, in the package in the beginning of this bond project, this came back as one of the aggressive bid, one of the lowest, this was the lowest number in order to prevent any more leaks moving forward. Steve can quote me if I'm wrong. If there's any leaks in the next 20 years, they're going to be coming out and they're going to fix it. There's a warranty on this, because I think Steve and I have said, if there's leaks in that gym, they're going to be coming after us. And we really wanted to commit to the community that, in construction and in building projects, there's certain things we're going to find that we're going to need to address that was not part of the bond project. However, in this project, we have add-ons that are addressed, that's been bidded out already, that we have received. And in our meeting this past Monday, the building committee unanimously agreed to send this recommendation to you guys to spend $44,000 and fix this area of leaks that's happened in the roof. And so I think it's the right path to do in order to really get this roofing issue addressed at the high school and make sure it's under warranty moving forward for the next 20 years. I think you're mute still, Jim.
I was just thanking you and
Yeah.
asking if there's any other thoughts or questions. Go ahead, Rob.
Just a smidge of clarification there. All of the green roofing is gone and all of the underlayment is gone. New zip board and a different type of material than the metal is going up. So there's going to be an all new roof on that addition section. And we also talked a little bit about the insulation and the noise factor. So hopefully that'll get better in some of the classrooms.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you very much.
Rob, I thought you were going to talk about bitchathane, but I guess
I
not.
was going to talk about bitchathane now that you brought it up.
Rob and I get to talk about such roofing things as that on Tuesday. I know he likes to say that.
It's great.
Any concerns
product.
with any concerns with this as an action item? All right, Norm, thank you.
Thank you,
thanks
guys.
to the building committee. That's great, and it's good to not have the leaky roof side. This would be great.
Thank you, guys.
So next up is the student safety nomination. Steve.
So very exciting nomination. Steve Bergathon comes forward as and it's supposed to be the AM and PM bus monitor. So before school and after school bus monitor. So if we could approve that, that would be great tonight as we approve with contracts, and that will help us keep our kids safe with some bus monitoring.
Any questions on that? All right, and Steve, you can keep on rolling with the remote preschool tuition.
Sure. So preschool is a tuition that is set by the board, and working with Kenda and Bill, we do have 4 youngsters that are availing themselves of a remote preschool program. And based on the amount of interaction and time remotely with our staff, we felt that about a 50% rate of our tuition would be fair for the people who aren't coming in. This is just the remote piece. So we would like to establish the remote tuition rate for 50% of our in-person rate.
And see, what would that figure be?
So it's for a 3-day-a-week program. I think I put, and Michelle can kick me, I think it's $240 for a 3-day-a-week program and $160 for a 2-day-a-week program. And so we would, I put it as 50% just in case we raise preschool. We don't have to bring this policy back. Isn't that nice? Or this action back. So that's where we're at.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions or concerns about this item? All right. And then last item is a public hearing on unanticipated revenue.
So this is just trying to get something on the board's calendar. Our second meeting of the month is typically operations and finance. And so on the 19th, we'd like to start at 5 and have a public hearing to receive the $44,000 from the ESSA funds and the additional funds through the $200 per child. And we would give an accounting of what we are spending, how we're allocating those funds. And we've been advised. So what Michelle has done, which is really good, is we include in our budget a federal projects number, because you can never, right, you can never spend more than what the town approves. And so we have a federal projects number that allows us to receive it. Now, some towns don't. And so to exceed it, you have to have the public hearing. But we've been advised to have the public hearing anyway, even though we would never exceed the bottom line because of what we've done. Actually, that goes way back. And I think we've talked about ARROW, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. That's when we moved our increased our federal project receipt ability. But in a couple of workshops Michelle and I attended, we've been advised, and we're happy to have a public hearing. We like transparency. I think it's a great thing, especially based on what we talked about tonight with technology. And so we can talk to the community about what we spent on PPE, what we've spent on anything related to those funds. And so we do it, if it works for the board's calendar, we'd like to do it at 5 o'clock on the 19th. We'll post it 7 days clean, put it in the paper, all that fun stuff, and have a public hearing that allows us to receive the unanticipated revenue through the CARES Act, the ESSA funds, and the additional funds, $200 per child. If that's
Any
okay.
questions on that? And I guess I would just ask if we don't have to look at our calendars now, but if anybody has a conflict for the 5 o'clock on the 19th, just let me know. And then Steve and I and Andrea, we can kind of work on figuring out how to schedule it. But we don't have to do that now. So just let me know if 5 o'clock on the 19th isn't going to work for you, and then we can figure out something alternate.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Steve. So with that, we have come to the end of our, I guess, business agenda. So now we have our second public comment period. And so again, for those who are attending, if you scroll down towards the bottom of your screen, you're going to have a raise your hand button. Just click on that, and then you can provide a comment to the board. And so the first hand up is Dennis Molnar. Hi, Dennis. Thanks for sticking with us and joining.
No, thanks everybody for an informative meeting. Just wanted to start by saying my kids have never been more excited to be back at school. I know that teachers probably can't hear it enough, but honestly, I've never had two children more excited to be in school, to have the opportunity to meet their teachers. And we had a really good experience with parent-teacher conferences, as many other people have said. I feel like I'm on a little bit of a parallel universe though, because I feel like we had a lot of these discussions back in August. There was a lot of talk about looking into the synchronous model and what it would take to do it and what technology would be needed. And I hear that there's not a budget, there's no orders been placed, and it's another 8 weeks to get there. And so I feel like when we talk about a different model, I don't think there's any debate, and I don't have any debate that the current system of a day one, excuse me, group A, group B, and reteaching the material twice obviously isn't covering the curriculum for many classes and many subjects. And so when we say we're going to do something different through the holidays and we'll reassess in mid to late January, if we don't do anything to plan for mid to late January, what are our choices going to be? Going back to what we have now or sticking with what we have? So when everybody says that this is only for, 8 weeks, get through the holidays, and then we'll reassess, if we don't plan to do anything different, how could we possibly reach a different decision? And in some ways, when the board and even our student representatives say to their other friends, do you like what we're doing now? Or here's a new plan. Well, guess what? We baked the answer into the cake. All right, what we're doing now doesn't seem to be a lot of debate, isn't working. So you offer a different alternative and everybody says, yeah, we'll go for it. I really have to ask the level set. Is there consistency and consensus among the board and administration that in-person instruction is better than, all things equal, and all things are not equal during COVID, but all things equal in the hypothetical world, is it better than remote learning? Do we believe that? Is that our mission as a school district? And then I have, excuse me, a follow-up question, depending on whether or not the answer is yes or no.
And I guess I don't know that I want to ask each board member to do a roll call vote on your question, but I do think from our conversations, I think the board has had since last March. I think that the board has had a commitment to have in as much in-person instruction as we felt we could do. And I hear your points around where we are in the current plan. Like I think we all feel probably something pretty similar. And so I'm not sure that it's that all things are not equal. And so I guess I'm not sure I want to ask each board member right now to do a roll call, but I think, our conversations over the past months I think are pretty strong to where I think this board has been trying to go with our hybrid model.
So maybe it's fair to say that as much in-person instruction as we can do safely, understanding that safely is a very important word in these times, would be the goal. I heard Norm describe his experience in class very similar to the way my son explained his experience, which is on his in-school day. He's a Group B kid. He goes in. And he explains to me that there is synchronous teaching going on. And I keep asking, well, what do you mean? We're not supposed to be doing synchronous teaching. It's not going on. He says, well, Dad, there are kids in Group B who are remote, all remote. And then there are people like me that are hybrid. And so the instruction for all of the kids in Group B, and there are more that are hybrid than are remote. And so the instruction is essentially the teacher trying to provide access to the class to the full remote student in their group who's at home. And it's usually a few kids. There tend to be more in the class. And he explains that to him, that's synchronous learning. Is it as good? Is it as interactive for those students who are remote as versus him in the class? I don't think anybody would say it is. but it is a form of teaching, of instructing, and covering material in a way that some kids get same material in class, some get it remotely. So that's one point that he basically said, well, why couldn't I just go on? Why couldn't we just teach different material on the second day and have me be remote while the A group kids are getting it in the classroom? And I haven't heard a good rationale for that. And I would support that by saying that there are other school districts that don't have the funds that we have. I'll list 3 that I'm aware of, and this was in about 15 minutes of asking around. Hillsborough, Kearsarge, and Goffstown are all doing hybrid model. They're all doing 50% in and 50% home. They're doing what they call synchronous. And most of them did not have a system-wide budget to acquire additional technology. So how are they doing it? How are our teachers doing it within the same group A or group B? I realize that there are some differences in whether you're looking through a computer screen or in person, but at the end of the day, we're kind of doing it. We're just not calling it synchronous. My other point is just, Jim, you described exactly the experience my son had. You described a whole day of Zoom calls. And I've been working from home, and I've been on the phone or in Zoom calls for much of the day, but it isn't 6 hours virtually straight, and it isn't for 2 weeks virtually straight. We're going to ask our children, who we used to say we limit you to screen time for 2 hours. We're going to ask them to be in front of a computer for 6 hours. I don't care what the quality of the education is or what the quality of the teaching that's on the other side of that computer. It's really, really, really hard to sit still, pay attention, interact hour after hour after hour, day after day, week after week. Does anybody on this call do that all day, every day for 2 weeks? And if the answer is yes, how do you feel when you're done? So I think we're being unreasonable with our children. I appreciate that this is a better instructional solution than trying to teach 2 days in a row to half the kids. But I don't think it's a better environment for the children, and my son certainly went along with that. And I guess lastly, I would just ask, I brought this up on the chat last night, but my son and our teacher confirmed that they tried to do synchronous learning between groups A and group B. And because that teacher had a subject that was amenable to it and had the technology personally that provided for his ability to do it, and he was told to stop. I don't know how we could possibly prepare to do synchronous learning system-wide, implement it, if we have no experience doing it. I appreciate that in August, some teachers got on different sides of a phone and tried to go through curriculum and discuss it. But at the end of the day, if we're trying to do the best that we can for the kids, if we really believe that there could be a better model than remote, because the spring didn't work great, what is the objection to maybe not letting everybody do it differently and have a different experience, but what is the objection to, at least in the next 2 months, setting up pilot tests with teachers and subjects and in departments that want to do something better that would involve more in person, and trying that out and seeing how it works. We're not going to hold it against anybody if it does work or if it doesn't. I don't think a teacher who doesn't have the opportunity to do remote should be judged any different than one that does. But how are we going to make a decision in mid-January with no experience, no pilot tests? We've already said that it's 8 to 10 weeks to get any technology, so we're not going to have any more technology. We're going to be sitting here in 2 months making the same decision we make now, which is we have no choice but to continue doing what we're doing. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Dennis. And I think what we talked about this evening when we set up, at least when we agreed, is that we're going to ask the administration to come back to us at each meeting. So just to your point around, we need to plan. I think that's what we're asking the administration to do. So at the end of this period, we're ready and have a plan for how to transition to a different model that includes more in-person instruction. But your points are made. I appreciate it. So next hand that we have up is, let's see, Mark and Sam.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, we sure can.
Thanks for taking my whatever we calling this, the Zoom, this new norm.
The comment, yes.
Yeah, the comment. There we go. So, I guess my comment is, I've listened to the entire meeting, and what I got from the meeting is that we're not doing this model based on safety or health reasons, and so I'm just wondering why we're going 2 weeks with remote and 1 week with the kids being in. I'm kind of going to echo Dennis a little bit, because I have a son that is a senior. He goes to CRTC every day, okay, and he is not behind. He is behind in every one of his courses at Hopkinton High School, because I mean, the new the current model, while I agree that it's not working with 2 days on, 2 days off, you're asking a kid to adjust their schedules and fluctuate so much that to the point where I have stickies all over my house just as reminders. And I get it. I mean, he's a senior, and I said, but I'm not making excuses for him, but I want also, it's hard for him to re-energize himself to be where he is supposed to be and focus. So now we're going to look at a model now where we're basically in school for 2 days, team A, team B, and then we're going to be off for 2 weeks. And I just don't know how. I mean, I don't know how that's going to play for the next 6 weeks. I know you have a hard job to do, but we as taxpayers, we voted you guys in to make the best decision for our kids. And what I'm seeing through this entire thing is that we're like kind of pushing things down the road to see where we get in the next 6 to 8 weeks. Is that doing justice by our kids? Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Next hand is Ann Shahade.
Hi, Ann Shahade, 280 Rollins Road. And I just wanted to say that I am a fan of the new proposal that is going to be trialed through the holidays. I think the loss of curriculum hours is huge. I think that the days off truly are, for the most part, days off. And I think that having the consistent schedule that so many parents have talked about is going to be really important for kids in terms of having them stay organized and also have that face time. Although I initially had really wanted to do the hybrid with synchronous learning, I've spoken with multiple different teachers of my kids, and the general consensus really seems to be that they can't do justice to either audience of kids that they're trying to teach. That if they really want to teach for the kids at home, they basically have to be glued in front of the screen. And I'm really hoping that the remote learning that we had back in the spring will not be of the same caliber, the depth, breadth, and dynamic components that hopefully the teachers will be able to do with the students now that they're more facile in using technology and using different kinds of platforms. I think it is worth trusting the teachers and giving them a trial and seeing what the remote learning experience is like. And it's not 2 weeks off. The 2 weeks at home would be, they'd be doing their classes as they normally would, and the teachers wouldn't have to be double teaching, and the kids can learn in real time and hopefully get more out of it. There's a lot of starting and stopping with 5 to 6 days between classes, and what's going on now isn't working. And unfortunately, in talking to the teachers, the kind of technology they need, like the owl cam and microphones, we just don't have right now. If we can get them, great. But if we don't have them, apparently when you have half in person and half at home, you can't even really have a dialogue with the kids in the class, because the kids at home can't hear the microphone from the kids in the classroom who are 6 feet apart. So it's very hard to interact as a classroom. And I think that this new system would really allow our kids to feel more engaged and have the class be more fully participatory. And those are my thoughts for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. And I think that's all the hands, except for the one that just popped up. Sorry. Is it Rokio Menard? I'm not sure I pronounced the first name wrong. Right. I apologize.
Hi, it's Rocio. It's Rosie Menard. I just have a couple questions about the schedule. So there is a skinny Monday, there's a 1 week team A, team B, and then there's 2 weeks remote. So I just want to be clear on what full remote means. Does it mean online classes, or does it mean independent learning?
So it means online classes. So it means the teachers are going to be teaching their class remotely, but it would be live instruction.
Okay. So another thing I wanted to bring up was that today, just today, I was able to call about 10 school districts, and they all seem to have a plan in place, whether it's hybrid, not independent learning, but hybrid, or in person. For instance, Pelham is 100% in person, and a variety of other schools are either hybrid or in person again. So I just wanted to kind of have an idea, why are we so behind on the 8 ball?
Yeah, I think it's a fair question, and I'm not sure I have an adequate answer for you, or at least an answer that's going to feel adequate to you. I just think that we have work to do. As I said earlier, I think other school districts, as you just stated, are doing this, and we're not. But I also feel that where we currently are needs a shift. We need to change because we're not delivering, as we all agree, we're not delivering the curriculum that we need to, and our kids on those off days right now are not, it's not productive time. And so something has to change. We have to make a shift. And in order for us, I think, to do that, we are going to need to, I don't know what the right term is. I'm going to use the wrong term. I'm going to use the term "put on the brakes," go to remote, and then get the answers, ask the administration to work on what a change looks like, and make sure that we get the adequate resources, both technology and staffing, that we need in order to pull it off in a way that we're delivering the curriculum as I think other districts are currently doing. But right now we can't do it. We can't. I don't think we can snap our fingers and make it happen. And so the model to get there is the one that I think the board and the administration put forward, the board's looking at. And I think that buys us some breathing room and time in order to make the adjustments that I think we all feel we need to. So again, I don't think that's adequate, and I'm sure you don't feel that's adequate, but I think that's the current reality that we're in.
I appreciate your response, and I appreciate every effort that's being made. However, for instance, I was on the phone with Bo today, and they have alerts, which are red, green, and yellow. And right now they're on yellow, which means hybrid. And when they are on red, it means all online. And when they're green, they're all in school. And so I'm thinking we can compare ourselves to sort of Bo. I'm not 100% sure if we can, but I would think we could, because they're kind of like at least in sports, they're kind of like who we compete against. So it's hard for me to understand why nearly every school district in New Hampshire has developed consistency and structure for their students, but we have not.
I appreciate your comment. And as we've worked through this, I think one thing that I've discovered is that every school district is different, and a lot of it, we have different faculty, we have different facility, and so I do think on sports we might compare well to Bo, but I'm not sure that our facilities compare well to Bo's. But your point is well taken. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Next hand is Amanda Gilman. And I would ask, Amanda, you haven't come over yet, so I'm not cutting you off. I would just ask those who have provided comments already and who haven't lowered their hands, if you could just do so if you don't have another comment that way. We just know who's next. So Amanda.
Hi, thank you all for your time tonight. For an improved instructional solution at the middle high school, the obvious answer is the all-in-person 100% in learning that many other schools in New Hampshire are doing. That said, as the administration and the board clearly doesn't have the appetite for the risk-benefit ratio of all in-person learning as many other schools in New Hampshire do, synchronous learning is apparently where we need to be as the best compromise. To echo what Dennis has said, I have heard from 2 teachers firsthand who wanted to teach or were teaching synchronously and then were told to stop. I'm wondering if the administration has any answer for this, why they were told to stop teaching synchronously.
I personally don't, and so I honestly can't answer, and I see Steve shaking his head. So I think this is, so I'm sorry, Amanda.
So is that something that the board could please look into, or Mr. Chamberlain could look into, because it is a definitive affirmative. I'm telling you 100% that teachers were told to stop teaching synchronously when they were able to do so.
And I think the short answer is yes, we will look into that.
Thank you very much. Next, I know that the governor approved, and I apologize because I missed the middle of this meeting. The governor approved $200 per student. Was this talked about, additional funding? Was this talked about this meeting?
It has been talked about in previous meetings. I don't think it was talked about specifically in this meeting, but we have,
I heard,
we know about it and we have discussed it.
Great. And do we know what that can be used on?
Steve shaking his head yes. So Steve, do you just want to give a thumbnail?
My question, Steve, actually, can it be used specifically on providing synchronous learning? Is that within the guidelines?
So it can be any related expense related to COVID, including the technology, as you described, Amanda, that would be so important for synchronous learning, as long as it is on premises and operational by December 30, 2020. It has to be operational has to be here and being used by December 30.
So was that stipulation in effect for the, I think it was $38,000 that we got before the school year started?
No,
I might be wrong on the number.
No, that's 44,000. And so what we did, we had the $44,000 allocated for some of the $80,000 we've spent on PPE and other pieces. But what Michelle has done now, because we've been instructed to, we're now reclassifying everything in the ESSA 44,000, which has a September of 2021 deadline, to the $200 per child money, which has to be spent by December 30. So the 44,000 we received as part of the CARES Act and ESSA can be reclassified and used beyond December 30. And that's what we're doing. And we're going to have a public hearing on this process before the next meeting.
Okay, so I implore the board to, and you, Mr. Chamberlain, please pursue this synchronous learning as a very viable concept and place to spend this money. And then my last question is I'd like to have an answer for why the administration is currently spending energy on developing proposals that involve more remote time and not spending time on developing plans that are involving being all in or more in-person time, especially when 2 parent surveys have very clearly shown that parents want their students all in, both the summer survey and the winter survey about holidays, and no one wants to travel. 76% of people want to stay around. So I wonder where this impetus for being more remote is coming from.
So I mean, I'll give a quick answer and then move on to the next speaker. And I guess, so part of the MOA agreement that we have with the with HEA was for the teachers and for the administration to collaborate on a change of schedule in order to meet the needs around curriculum, which we've discussed. And so what came out of that collaborative agreement, or at least what came out of that collaboration, was this proposal that the board's been discussing for the last 2 weeks. And so that's the origin. That's how this has come about. And so That's the short answer to your question.
Okay, is the board considering at all in the future renegotiating this MOA? Is this even on the radar, or are we just planning for full remote?
So Amanda, I think the MOA said that the board, that they would bring back a collaborative recommendation this month in October, which they did. So that was the only stipulation within the MOA that that's in there. So the MOA doesn't need to be renegotiated in order for us to keep working on a different model.
Okay, thank you for your time. I implore the board to consider more all in-person learning. We've talked about this several times. The kids at the low end who need extra help have IEPs and 504s. They're going to get brought in to get the extra help. And the kids at the top end of the spectrum, I assume, who are our wonderful school representatives that are on this call, are going to do well, whether they're remote or whether they are in person. They will. They're going to succeed because they're great students. It's the kids in the middle who are going to be lost, and they're going to fall between the cracks. And I think that Andrea said she doesn't want them to fall between the cracks. She wants them to be caught. Well, falling between the cracks inherently defines the fact that they will be lost. So I don't see how that's going to happen. I think that the kids in the middle are going to fall further behind the grade level. And I haven't seen the STAR testing say for the younger kids. And I don't know what the academic scoring is for the high school to show whether our kids are actually, as a whole, falling further behind grade level. But I think that needs to be looked at, and I would like the board to do that.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next hand is Trafton.
Hi, good evening.
Yeah, during it, I hate that.
Can you hear me?
We sure can, yes.
Okay, sorry.
If you could just identify yourself, that would be great.
Melissa Trafton, 500 Gold Hill Road. So thank you, Jim, for your mandate, to the administration. Thank you to the people who commented before I have, especially Dennis Molnar, with whom I agree. I think that this is a really valuable opportunity. I'm in support of this schedule in order, as you suggested, to get us back on track by mid-January, with the hope that we can move towards more synchronous learning for all the reasons. I've been teaching fully remotely at the college level since September, and I am fully aware that there is no silver bullet. And I spent all summer learning to do all of the online things that we think are going to make remote learning wonderful. It doesn't. It's terrible. And I think we need to be really honest about that. I spent, every week all summer learning about all of the Jamboard and breakout rooms and all of these things. So I think we need to go into it knowing that, and that everyone's expectations are that we're going to deliver content for these 6 weeks, but also, as you've suggested, that this is a time for innovation. The institutions and the businesses which are going to survive this pandemic are those that are pivoting and flexible and changing. And I'd like us to think of that in these next 6 weeks as a chance for our teachers to experiment, and to give them the freedom to experiment, and to not hold all the teachers to the same model, to recognize that different age groups, different size classes, different disciplines, pedagogical styles will be different and should be different. And they should be given, that our teachers are wonderfully dedicated, extremely skilled professionals who should be given the opportunity to fulfill whatever they see, the best way they envision it happening. So I hope that we see this both as a chance to experiment, and that the board and parents recognize that fully remote is going to be a drag, but that we use the opportunity to grow and perhaps change by mid-January.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. So the hands that are raised, I think everybody has provided comments, and so there's and so I just want to make sure before we call on you again that you have more comments to provide. And so if you've already spoken and you don't wish to speak again, please just lower your hand. And if not, I would ask for Amanda Gilman again.
Yes, I am that jerk. I didn't lower my hand. Thank you all. Good night. I didn't know it was still up. Good night. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Amanda. And we just heard from Melissa Trafton. So Dennis Molnar, I don't know if you have another comment to give, but I don't want to not call on you if your hand's still up.
Okay. Yeah, no, I do.
Okay.
I mentioned that I was on a chat last night, and Amanda asked a question that was addressed directly on the chat. And I'm a little surprised either nobody on your side of the screen was on the chat, or you didn't answer what was communicated by the administration yesterday. So the question was, why were teachers not allowed to, I asked the question, so I know what the answer is. Why are teachers not allowed to do synchronous learning? And the response from the administration was was not consistent with equitability principles within the schools. So I'd never heard of that before. So I pressed with a follow-up question. And what appeared to be the answer is that if one class, teacher, or set of students is able to benefit from synchronous learning and others are not, that's not fair to the ones that could not benefit from it. And I found that shocking and very disappointing. And I think that that some of the other questions here tonight are sort of around, why would we not allow our teachers to try to do best for our students? Again, if the board is unaware of that, I think you should familiarize yourselves with it and go from there. And then the other question about going all in person, as we know, the MOA signed in the fall would not allow us to go all in person because we require a 6 feet and mask distancing between everybody. And it's unlikely that we'll be able to renegotiate that as well, because we need to get to the green level of less than 1 case per 100,000 in order to revisit that, even if there's a vaccine, even if there's no cases in our town. And so I think that we should all be realistic that there's probably not going to be a full in-person opportunity. I think our best opportunity is what we've got now, if in-person is important to you. And it's only going to be this or less. So thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate it. And thank you for the clarification too. That wasn't a board meeting last night. I say it wasn't a board meeting last night. It was an opportunity to ask questions and answers of the administration. So I apologize. I didn't have that answer that was given last night because I wasn't part of the call. But I appreciate your feedback. All right, so I see no other hands raised. And so I'm going to close the public comment and we're going to move on to action items. And so our first action item is to see if there's a motion for the Hopkinton School Board to approve the next stage of secondary school hybrid model as discussed.
So moved.
Second.
Perfect. And so I think we've discussed that a lot. And so I think Steve, you're clear on sort of at least where we are and sort of some next steps to take.
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion on this item? All right, hearing none. Seth? Seth, you're muted.
Seth A-frame, yes.
Andrea?
Andrea Folsom, yes.
Rob?
Rob Nato, yes.
Norm?
Norm Gupel, yes.
Jim O'Brien is a yes. So that passes 5-0. Is there a motion for the Hopkinton School Board to approve the superintendent's nomination of Steve Bergathon, PM bus monitor?
Oh, can you add AM for me?
I sure can. Morning and afternoon bus monitor.
Thank you. Bill will be happy.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Norm?
Norm Gupel, yes.
Rob?
Rob Nato, yes.
Andrea?
Andrea Folsom, yes.
Seth?
Seth A-frame, yes.
And Jim O'Brien is a yes. Is there a motion for the Hopkinton School Board to accept the Hopkinton Building Committee's recommendation to adopt an additional alternate for work on the HMHS roof as part of the March 2019 building project?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? And the estimated dollar amount is 44,000. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, 44,000. Norm had it. Norm nailed it.
No.
Yeah. Do you want the exact amount, Jim?
No. I think if it's there's no exact amount in here, so I think the understanding is that's around $44,000. I think we're probably
44,360.
Yeah.
Good
You
stick.
got it.
That board notes?
Yeah.
Nice.
Good job.
Any further discussion? All right, Andrea.
Andrea Folsom, yes.
Seth.
Seth A. Frame, yes.
Norm.
Yes to no leaks. Norm Gupel is a yes.
Rob.
Rob Nato, yes.
Are there any pro leak board members out there, Norm? All right, and lastly, Jim O'Brien is a yes, so it's 5-0. And finally, is there a motion for the Hopkinton School Board to accept the superintendent's recommendation to set the remote preschool rate to 50% of the in-person remote preschool tuition rate?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion, or is everybody clear? I saw Andrea squinting at the screen, so I want to make sure she's clear on what we're voting for.
That's a fun, it's a lot of words in that sentence. I'm clear, it's fine.
All right, any further discussion? All right, Andrea?
Andrea Folsom's yes.
Rob?
Rob Nato, yes.
Norm?
Norm Gupel, yes.
Seth?
Seth A. Frame, yes.
Jim O'Brien is a yes. I don't believe we have any need for a non-public this evening, so I think we're in good shape. I would just thank everyone and say we're adjourned. So we'll see you all in 2 weeks. And thank you to Mia and Juliet for joining us and for sharing your thoughts on the schedule. It's really good to have your voice as part of that conversation. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Good night,
See you at
everyone.
7:30 tomorrow.